Chapter 112. The 6 drops of blood essence were prepared for the two of them. Hearing Chunling's words, Xiao Chun smiled helplessly. This guy was so secretive. He wouldn't tell him what he wanted to do. He didn't tell Xiao Chun what he needed the 6 drops of blood essence for. Instead, he patiently stayed in the kingdom of demonic beasts. His days were comfortable and comfortable. After all, with Xiao Qing around, no demonic beasts dared to disrespect him and the others. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. On this day, the 3 beast emperors called Xiao Chun and the other 2 to the main hall. They had already prepared all the ingredients needed for the dragon transformation liquid. For half a month, the beast kings and beast sovereigns of the monster kingdom were on a large scale. Not only did they search the 10,000 beast mountain range for these ingredients, they even went to human territory and bought a lot of ingredients. It was worth mentioning that the monster kingdom's large-scale looting of all kinds of natural treasures naturally attracted the attention of the beast sovereigns. One of the beast sovereigns even sent a divine consciousness clone to the monster kingdom to ask the 3 beast emperors about their intentions. However, the 3 beast emperors evaded the question. All in all, the monster kingdom's large purchases this time attracted the attention of all parties. And all of this was just to make a single batch of dragon transformation liquid for Xiao Qing. The beast emperor handed a storage ring to Chunling. Inside were the required ingredients and 9 drops of blood essence from the 3 beast emperors. How long will it take to make the dragon transformation liquid? The Soul Emperor asked after handing the storage ring to Chunling. 9 days. However, Xiao Qing will probably need half a month to absorb all the medicinal power. Chunling replied. After asking about other matters, the 3 beast emperors allowed Xiao Chun and the other 2 to leave. Of course, during this time, the 3 beast emperors had arranged for people to monitor Xiao Chun and the other 2. After all, they had given so many precious treasures to Chunling. If he couldn't make the dragon transformation liquid, the 3 beast emperors would probably flip out. Chunling didn't mind being monitored. After returning to his residence, he began to make the dragon transformation liquid. The dragon transformation liquid was not an elixir, hence, it was not too troublesome. The only thing he needed to pay attention to was the method of fusing the various ingredients together. However, such a small matter was not difficult for Chunling. Hence, in just 9 days, the dragon transformation liquid was prepared by Chunling. Not only did the small flask of golden liquid contain all kinds of natural treasures, but it also contained 3 drops of blood essence from a beast emperor. After concocting the dragonized liquid, Xiao Chun handed it over to the 3 beast emperors. After the 3 beast emperors checked and confirmed that there were no mistakes, Xiao Chun was brought to a secret room designated by the 3 beast emperors to cultivate in seclusion. Xiao Qing began her closed-door cultivation. At the same time, the 3 beast emperors stopped monitoring Xiao Chun and Chunling. After all, Xiao Qing was currently in closed-door cultivation, which proved that Chunling had not lied to them. As such, they only needed to wait for Xiao Qing to emerge. No one was monitoring them. This was naturally a good thing for Xiao Chun and Chunling. Next, Chunling prepared to teach Xiao Chun how to refine the 3 drops of Beast Emperor's blood essence. The 3 brothers each had 3 drops of Beast Emperor's blood essence. Sitting cross-legged on the bed in the room, Chunling took out 3 jade bottles. Each bottle contained a drop of Beast Emperor's blood essence. This was a true treasure. It was priceless. In the entire heavenly Qin continent, who could possess a Beast Emperor's blood essence? Perhaps even the 7 sovereigns did not have one. Xiao Chun, I want these 3 drops of Beast Emperor's blood essence. My goal is to improve our physical bodies. Hence, you must remember the refining method that I'm going to tell you. During the refining process, you must not make a single mistake. Otherwise, the violent energy within the blood essence will instantly kill you. At this moment, Chunling's expression was very serious. This was understandable. After all, the 2 of them were only at the advanced mysterious Ian stage. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to refine the Beast Emperor's blood essence at this stage. Only Chunling, who had the memories of his previous life and a unique refining method, could do it. However, they could not make a single mistake during the refining process. Otherwise, the energy within the blood essence could easily kill the two of them. According to the method that Chun-Ling taught them, with their current cultivation, it was impossible for them to refine the energy within the 3 drops of blood essence in one go. Hence, they could only use a special method to fuse the 3 drops of blood essence into their bodies and condense them into blood pills. Letting the blood pills continuously nourish their physical bodies would take a long time. However, this was the only method at the moment. At the same time, after completely refining the blood pills in the future, according to what Chun-Ling said, it would be enough for the two of them to form Dao bodies in advance. It had to be said that Chun-Ling's method was superb. Furthermore, under the constant nourishment of the blood pills, the two of them would continuously strengthen their physical bodies. This was the most important thing. As everyone knew, monster beasts were born with powerful physical bodies. This was their innate talent. Humans could only look up to them. Chun-Ling used this method to transfer the powerful physical bodies of monster beasts to the two of them. Chun-Ling told Xiao Chun in detail what he needed to pay attention to throughout the entire process. Finally, under Chun-Ling's guidance, Xiao Chun swallowed the 3 drops of blood essence into his abdomen. Following Chun-Ling's instructions, the blood essence slowly condensed in his body. It took a total of 3 days to condense the blood pill. Seeing that Xiao Chun had succeeded, Chun-Ling was relieved. He then began to condense his own blood pill. At this time, Chun-Ling began to condense the blood pill. After Xiao Chun felt his current physical body, he could not help but feel a burst of excitement. He had just condensed the blood pill and had not absorbed much of its energy. However, his physical body was already several times stronger. It was no exaggeration to say that his current physical strength was invincible in the mysterious Ian realm. In the entire Tianxin continent, no mysterious Ian realm warrior's physical body could be as strong as his. Even Huang Gu, who had the savage tyrant body, could not compare to him in terms of physical strength. Such a terrifying increase, and this was only the benefit of condensing the blood pill. It was hard to imagine how strong his physical body would become after the blood pill continued to nourish his body and the energy in the blood pill was completely refined by him. Xiao Chen's current state, simply put, was equivalent to a body refinement martial artist who was constantly cultivating a body refinement martial art. However, Xiao Chun did not need to cultivate because his body would automatically absorb the energy of the blood pill. In the end, Xiao Chun would become a powerful body refinement martial artist without paying any price. He would have an invincible physical strength in the same realm. Chun-Ling's move had given him a great opportunity. Of course, this was not something that anyone could obtain. Think about it. In the entire heavenly Chun continent, other than Xiao Chun and the other two, who else could obtain the life-blood essence of a beast emperor? Even the 7 dominators cannot do it. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 113. After successfully condensing the blood core, Xiao Chun had to wait for Chun-Ling to condense the blood core and for Xiao Qing to come out of seclusion. It would take at least half a month, especially for Xiao Qing. The dragon transformation liquid was extremely important to Xiao Qing, so there could not be any mistakes during the seclusion. While waiting for Xiao Qing to come out of seclusion, Xiao Qin also planned to make another breakthrough in his cultivation. Under normal circumstances, it would be very difficult for Xiao Chun to make another breakthrough after breaking through to the greater mysterious Yuan stage. However, because of the blood core, Xiao Qin's cultivation had improved, so there was a possibility for him to break through to the lesser mysterious Yuan stage. At the same time, 3 days later, Chun-Ling successfully condensed the blood core. After seeing that Xiao Chun was in seclusion, Chun-Ling also planned to make a breakthrough in his cultivation. The two brothers cultivated while waiting for Xiao Qing to come out of seclusion. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Xiao Chun and Chun-Ling both broke through to the lesser mysterious Yuan stage. This breakthrough was greatly helped by the blood core. After successfully breaking through, they waited for another 5 days. Xiaoqing also successfully refined the dragon transformation liquid, and the power of its bloodline was activated. Even though it was only a Class 2 demonic beast, it could already speak. Xiaoqing excitedly found Xiao, Chun, and Chunling. After half a month of seclusion, Xiaoqing's appearance had changed greatly. Its snake body had completely disappeared, and 2 small dragon horns stood on its forehead. At the same time, 4 dragon claws had grown out of its abdomen, and each dragon claw had 5 fingers. As everyone knew, a true dragon had 5 fingers, and a flood dragon only had 4. It was obvious that Xiaoqing's bloodline was indeed that of a true dragon. Seeing the changes in Xiaoqing, Xiao Chun and Chunling were very happy. After all, the dragon transformation liquid was not wasted, and Xiaoqing's bloodline power had been activated. Although they were happy, when they heard Xiaoqing speak, Xiao Chun and Chunling were stunned. Looking at Xiaoqing, Xiao Chun said in shock, "You're a girl?" Previously, they had not paid attention to little Qing's gender. However, when little Qing opened her mouth to speak, that pleasant female voice immediately stunned Xiao Chun and Chunling. A girl. Xiaoqing was actually a girl. For a moment, Xiao Chun and Chun found it hard to accept. Facing their shock, Xiaoqing said with an unhappy face, "What's wrong with being a girl? Why? Are you two looking down on me?" No. Facing Xiaoqing's dissatisfaction, Chunling explained Xiaoqing's words. Originally, the 3 of them were planning to become sworn brothers, but now that little Qing had. Xiao Chun and Yi Zichen were a little confused. So what if she's a woman? Can a woman be your brother? Or are you saying that you don't want to be sworn brothers with me anymore? Xiaoqing yelled. It wasn't that they didn't want to be sworn brothers with Xiaoqing. It was just that they couldn't get used to it. As time passed, Xiao Chun and Chunling gradually accepted Xiaoqing's identity. At the same time, Xiaoqing also gave herself a name, Long Qing. The dragon race had Long as their surname, so there was no problem with this name. After accepting Xiaoqing's identity as a girl, the 3 of them naturally wouldn't go back on their words. However, they encountered another problem, which was the ranking among the 3 of them. Since the 3 of them were sworn brothers, there naturally had to be a ranking. As for who should be the big brother, the 3 of them had different opinions. According to Chunling, since they were going to be sworn brothers, they would naturally be ranked according to age. In this way, Chunling, who had lived 2 lives, would undoubtedly be the big brother. Xiaoqing couldn't persuade Chunling to be the big brother, so he eventually agreed. However, Xiao Chun was completely speechless when the second brother and sister argued. Long Qing insisted on being the second sister no matter what, while Xiao Chun became the third brother, the youngest among the 3 of them. Xiao Chun naturally wasn't happy about it. I don't have any opinions about ranking according to age. I also don't have any opinions about Chunling being the big brother. But you were just born. Why do you have to be the second sister? Long Qing was born in the 100 Spirits graveyard. In this way, she was indeed younger than Xiao Chun. However, this was Xiao Chen's reason. According to Long Qing, although she was just born, if the time she hatched was included, she was much older than Xiao Chun. When Long Qing was born to Chunling, Long Qing was just a dragon egg. She hadn't even hatched. However, Long Qing insisted on counting her age from here. In this way, she was indeed much older than Xiao Chun. She didn't give in at all. In the end, as expected, Xiao Chun was defeated. Reality proved that it was almost impossible to reason with a woman, even if this woman was a dragon. After the ranking was confirmed, among the 3 siblings, Chunling was the eldest, Long Qing was the second, and Xiao Chun became the third, which meant that he was the little brother among the 3 of them. Looking at Chunling and Chunling's sinister smiles, Xiao Chun said unhappily, "According to your calculation, the 2 of you are already old monsters who have lived for who knows how many years. Even the 3 beast emperors and the 7 beast rulers aren't as old as the 2 of you, right?" Xiao Chun had become the youngest among the 3 of them for no reason. One could imagine how he felt. Chunling and Chunling didn't care about Xiao Chen's displeasure at all. After the ranking was confirmed, The next step was to become sworn siblings. According to Longqing's wishes, the three of them couldn't be too casual about becoming sworn siblings. Therefore, Longqing asked the three beast emperors for help. She hoped that they could host the ceremony for the three of them to become sworn siblings in front of all the monsters in the Wanshou mountain range. Having three beast emperors as witnesses was definitely a luxurious treatment. In the face of Longqing's request, the three beast emperors didn't refuse. After all, this was a small matter. The date of the ceremony was set to be 3 days later. Under the orders of the beast emperors, the monsters in the Wanshou mountain range all began to move. In fact, there was no need to prepare anything. The location of the ceremony was set at the highest mountain peak in the Wanshou mountain range. It was called the Golden Peak. It was said that this was not only the highest mountain in the Wanshou mountain range, but also the highest mountain in the entire heavenly Chun continent. At the same time, it was also known as the place closest to the sun, so it was called the Golden Peak. The location of the ceremony was directly set at the Golden Peak. Of course, with Xiao Chun and the other two's current strength, it was impossible for them to reach the Golden Peak. On the day of the ceremony, the three beast emperors would personally lead the three of them to the Golden Peak. Becoming sworn siblings at the Golden Peak filled Xiao Chun and the other two's hearts with anticipation. Along the way, there was no need to talk about the feelings between the three of them. Today, they were about to become sworn siblings. In the hearts of the three of them, they already saw each other as family. Please collect, recommend, reward. The three beast emperors also went to their seats and sat down, leaving the center of the Golden Summit to Xiao Chun and the other two. The auspicious time had arrived. Xiao Chun and the other two knelt on the ground. A Beast King had already prepared 3 bowls of wine. Then, Chun Ling, Xiao Chun, and Longqing, the three of them pricked their index fingers at the same time and mixed their blood into the 3 bowls of wine. With the yellow heavens as my witness, today, I, Chun Ling, I, Longqing, and I, Xiao Chun, swear to be sworn brothers. From today onwards, we are willing to share blessings and hardships together. If we violate this oath, may the heavens strike us with lightning and we die without a burial place. The three of them shouted at the same time. As soon as their voices fell, they drank the blood wine in their hands. The whole swearing ceremony was not complicated. Of course, this was also what Xiao Chun and the other two wanted. These complicated ceremonies were not very useful. The most important thing was the feelings between the three of them. After drinking the blood wine, the three of them stood up and looked at Xiao Chun and Longqing. Chun Ling smiled and said, "Second sister, third brother, big brother, third brother." Longqing said, since they were sworn brothers, it was natural for them to address each other as siblings. As soon as their voices fell, they turned to Xiao Chun at the same time. Seeing this, Xiao Chun smiled helplessly. "Big brother, second sister, haha, third brother, since we are already brothers, you should practice calling me big brother more in the future. Judging from your reaction just now, it seems like you're still a little unfamiliar with it. Come, call me that again." Hearing the helplessness in Xiao Chun's words, Chun Ling teased. Hearing this, Xiao Chun scolded in annoyance. Scram, these two fellas, one of them became the big brother and the other became the second sister because of their age, and now they actually dared to tease him. But in the next second, the three of them hugged each other. Just as Xiao Chun said, since the three of them were already siblings, no matter where they were in the future, their hearts would be tightly linked together in the name of brothers. After the ceremony was over, it was time to drink and celebrate. Of course, before that, Longqing gave her blood essence to the 3 beast emperors in front of the crowd. Facing Longqing's gift, the 3 beast emperors were thrilled. Although Longqing only gave them ordinary blood essence, it was the blood essence of a true dragon, which was extremely precious. After receiving Longqing's blood essence, as they wished, the 3 beast emperors were naturally in a good mood. Everyone drank to their heart's content on the Golden Peak. From time to time, Roars of beasts could be heard from the foot of the mountain, as though they were congratulating Xiao Chun and the other two. No matter if it was Xiao Chun, Chun Ling, or Long Qing, the three of them were very happy today. At the same time, it was also the first time the three of them were drunk and unconscious. In the end, it was the three beast emperors who sent the three of them back to their residence. After sleeping for an entire night, when Xiao Chun woke up the next day, he realized that he was already in his room. Thinking about yesterday's incident, Xiao Chun couldn't help but smile. Since yesterday, it was undeniable that Xiao Chun had some more worries in his heart. And these worries naturally came from Chun Ling and Long Qing. One was his big brother, while the other was his second sister. Of course, he believed that it was the same for the two of them. Now that everything was settled, the next step was to leave. This was something that Chun Ling and Long Qing were also aware of. Moreover, Long Qing had already requested the three beast emperors to make life tokens for the three of them. These life tokens were very precious, and they could only be made from the extremely rare and precious heavenly soulwood. The use of life tokens was also very simple. By injecting one's spirit energy into it, the life token would be able to display that person's vitality. If the owner of a life token was injured or died, the life token would shatter or be directly destroyed. This would tell others about the owner's situation. They made 2 life tokens for each of the 3 siblings, making a total of 6. After injecting their spirit energy into the life tokens, the 3 siblings each kept 2. Xiao Chun held Chun Ling and Long Qing's life tokens. Chun Ling held Xiao Chun and Long Qing's life tokens, and Long Qing held Xiao Chun and Chun Ling's life tokens. This way, even if they weren't together, the 3 siblings would be able to immediately know each other's situation through their life tokens. If each other was injured or died, the 3 of them would immediately know. It was time to part. After making the life tokens, Long Qing and Ling Huang personally sent Xiao Chun and Chun Ling to the outskirts of the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range. Of course, this place was close to the central divine domain, and it was the other exit of the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range. Long Qing reluctantly looked at the 2 siblings and said, "Big brother, third brother, are you really not going to stay?" Chapter 115. Big brother, third brother, are you really not going to stay? Even though she knew it was impossible, Long Qing still could not help but ask. Hearing Long Qing's words, Chun Ling smiled and said, "Second sister, you'll be able to obtain the best cultivation environment if you stay in the country of Yao beasts. However, third brother and I are different. There is no point in us staying in the country of Yao beasts. Work hard on your cultivation. Trust me, it won't be long before we 3 siblings meet again." As mentioned before, Chun Ling and Xiao Chun would not be staying in the country of Yao beasts. The cultivation methods of Yao beasts and humans were different. Even the 3 great beast emperors could only provide limited help to Xiao Chun and Chun Ling. Hearing Chun Ling's words, Long Qing nodded slightly. Then, Xiao Chun waved to Long Qing and said, "Let's go, second sister. If you ever come to the Divine Central Region, come find me at 9 Firmaments Palace." After bidding farewell to Long Qing, the 2 of them left the All-Beast Mountain Range and officially set foot on the Divine Central Region. They had already planned to head to 9 Firmaments Palace. After all, Qin Shiru was still waiting for them there. The first time they came to the Divine Central Region, they found a small town outside the All-Beast Mountain Range. It had been a long time since they had eaten human food and wine. After finding a restaurant, Xiao Chun and Chun Ling ordered a few dishes and a jug of wine and began eating. "Big brother, why don't you come with me to 9 Firmaments Palace?" Xiao Chun said as he drank. Chun Ling had not mentioned where he wanted to go. Now, Xiao Chun had taken the initiative to invite him. Chun Ling smiled in response to Xiao Chun's invitation. "I'm not going, third brother. Going to 9 Firmaments Palace is not beneficial to me. You know that." He had no intention of going to 9 Firmaments Palace. Moreover, from Chun Ling's words, it seemed that he was not planning on joining any forces. As Chun Ling, he was the reincarnation of an ancient almighty. He did not need anyone to guide him. For him, cultivation was very simple. Moreover, In his memories, he had all sorts of superb martial skills. There was no need for him to head to those great forces to cultivate. Chunling had no intention of going to Nine Firmaments Palace with him. After saying that, Chunling paused for a moment before continuing. Third brother, you can say that my future has already been set. With the memories of my previous life, I only need to cultivate step by step. But you're different. You're like a blank piece of paper now. Your future has unlimited possibilities. Third brother, your talent is the strongest I've ever seen in my life. Even though I've seen countless geniuses in the past, very few could compare to you. Originally, I was wondering if I should bring you along with me. However, after thinking about it, I gave up on that idea. All my life, I have only loved the Tao of Blades. I did not have much involvement in the Tao of Swords. Although you might have an advantage in terms of cultivation if you follow me, you will be greatly restricted in other aspects. Throwing away a watermelon for a sesame seed is not worth it. So, I decided that instead of having you follow me, it would be better for you to explore on your own. Everyone's path is different. You have just stepped onto the path of martial arts. Exploring on your own and witnessing the vastness of martial arts is more beneficial for you. Moreover, I firmly believe that only in this way, after experiencing your own trials, will you be able to shine with your own brilliance in the future. Chunling had originally thought of bringing Xiao Chun along with him so that he could guide Xiao Chen's cultivation. However, this idea had now been rejected by Chunling. Although it was too easy for Chunling to guide Xiao Chen's cultivation with his previous life's cultivation, was this really a good thing for Xiao Chun? After spending this period of time together, Chunling had fully witnessed Xiao Chen's talent. It was precisely because he understood Xiao Chen's talent that Chunling actually felt that he could not teach Xiao Chun. Not only would it not benefit Xiao Chun if he tied Xiao Chun to his side, it might even hinder his future development. In Chunling's opinion, Xiao Chun was a piece of unpolished jade. Moreover, this piece of unpolished jade had yet to reveal its true potential. Only after undergoing countless trials and tribulations, this piece of unpolished jade like Xiao Chun would truly stand proudly in the world. In Chunling's heart, although he had never said it out loud, his intuition told him that among the three siblings, Xiao Chen's future accomplishments would likely far surpass his and Longqing's. This was because, from a certain perspective, his and Longqing's futures were basically destined. He was the reincarnation of an ancient supreme existence, while Longqing was a member of the Dragon Clan. Although their future accomplishments would be very high, there would still be a limit. However, Xiao Chen was different. His future was limitless. Thus, Chunling was willing and hoped that Xiao Chen would be able to forge his own path. Of course, at the same time, he and Longqing would always stand behind Xiao Chen and support him. After all, they were Xiao Chen's big brother and second sister. He did not plan on following Xiao Chun to Nine Firmaments Palace. At the same time, he did not plan on having Xiao Chun by his side. Hearing Chunling's words, Xiao Chen knew what he meant. He nodded his head and did not say anything else. After the meal, it was already night. Chunling suggested that the two of them stay in town for the night. Xiao Chun did not refuse. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Xiao Chun had to rush to Nine Firmaments Palace. Chunling obviously had his own plans. The two of them planned to part ways here. Outside the town, the two brothers each led a dragon horse and bid farewell to each other. Before they parted, Chunling suddenly said, "Third brother, I have never had anything good to give you. Moreover, I am not too deeply involved in the way of the sword. There is not much I can give you. I only have one sword technique here. I will give it to you. Relax your mind and do not resist it." Before leaving, Chunling was prepared to pass on the only sword technique in his memory to Xiao Chun. The two of them connected their minds, and a huge amount of information quickly flowed into Xiao Chen's mind. After a full 10 breaths, the two of them stopped. Then, a strange expression appeared on Xiao Chen's face. The martial technique that Chunling passed on to him was called the Nine Heaven Sword Finger. Chunling did not know the specific realm. It was something that he had obtained by chance in an ancient ruin in his previous life. However, According to the records, the 9 heaven sword finger had a total of 9 fingers. The first finger was equivalent to a normal martial technique. The second finger was equivalent to a Xian martial technique. The third finger was equivalent to an earth martial technique. The fourth finger had reached the terrifying heaven martial technique. It was definitely a heaven-defying martial technique. Just the fourth finger was already a heaven-level martial technique. Then what about the fifth finger, the sixth finger, and the ninth finger? What kind of terrifying level would it reach? It was definitely giving Xiao Chun a huge treasure. Regarding this, Chun Ling did not even frown. In his opinion, no heaven-defying treasure could compare to the feelings between the three of them. Knowing that the 9 heaven sword finger would be of great help to Xiao Chun, Chun Ling smiled and mounted his horse. Then he laughed loudly and said, "Let's go, third brother. You have to cultivate well. The next time we meet, don't let me and second sister leave you behind too much." After saying that, he clamped his legs on the horse's belly and left. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 116. Chun Ling left in a very carefree manner. He left behind a peerless opportunity like the 9th heaven sword finger to Xiao Chun before leaving. Watching Chun Ling leave, Xiao Chun shouted with a smile, "Don't worry, the next time we meet, I will not be left behind by big brother and second sister." Xiao Chun's words did not receive a response, but Chun Ling, who was far away, had a smile on his face. At this point, the 3 siblings had gone their separate ways, each of them searching for their own path of martial arts. Although they had separated, their hearts were still tightly connected. Seeing Chun Ling disappear from sight, Xiao Chun mounted his horse and rushed towards 9 Firmament's palace. The entire Divine Central region was very large, occupying over 60% of the heavenly Chun mainland. Moreover, due to the existence of the 7 great overlords, although there were many sects and families within the Divine Central region, it was still divided into 7 prefectures. The division of the 7 prefectures was based on the 7 great overlords. Each of the 7 great overlords ruled over a prefecture. Xiao Chun was currently in the Heavenly Pill Prefecture, where the Heavenly Dan Valley was established by the Heavenly Pill ruler. As one of the 7 great overlords, the Heavenly Pill ruler was known as the #1 alchemist in the Heavenly Chun mainland. At the same time, the Heavenly Dan Valley that he established was also a place that all alchemists in the Heavenly Chun mainland yearned for. Over 70% of the alchemists in the entire continent came from the Heavenly Dan Valley. It could be said that the Heavenly Dan Valley controlled all of the alchemists in the Heavenly Chun mainland. However, the Heavenly Dan Valley rarely participated in the struggle, as if it was detached from the world. Because of this and their identity as alchemists, the Heavenly Dan Valley was very popular in the Heavenly Chun mainland. It had close cooperation with the other 6 great overlords. Thinking about it, which cultivator could live without medicinal pills? Due to the existence of the Heavenly Dan Valley, the number of alchemists in the Heavenly Pill Prefecture was the highest. Within the Heavenly Pill Prefecture's territory, almost every city had an Earth-tier alchemist. Alchemists were divided into alchemy apprentices, mortal-level alchemists, black-level alchemists, earth-level alchemists, and sky-level alchemists. In the Eastern Sun region, Earth-grade alchemists were rare. However, in the Heavenly Pill Prefecture, almost every city had an Earth-grade alchemist. From this, one could see the difference between the two. They rushed towards 9 Firmament's Palace's residence, 9 Firmament's Palace. However, due to the long distance, Xiao Chun had no choice but to rest while making his way there. Half a month later, Xiao Chun still had not left the territory of the Heavenly Elixir Prefecture. There was nothing he could do about it, as the Central Divine Realm was just too big. One day, Xiao Chun arrived at a city called the City of the Apothecary King. Originally, Xiao Chun planned to rest here for the night before leaving. However, during dinner, he heard 2 pieces of news that interested him. The first was about the movements of the heavenly prides in the Heavenly Chun mainland. It had been several months since he entered the Myriad Beast Mountain Range. During this period of time, many changes had occurred in the Heavenly Chun mainland, especially regarding the heavenly prides. It was known as a golden age that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. Under this golden age, the heavenly Chun mainland produced many heavenly prides and monsters. However, it was obvious that the world had underestimated the arrival of this golden age. After Shao Chun and the other heavenly prides appeared, more and more heavenly prides appeared in the heavenly Chun mainland. In just a few months, the number of recognized heavenly prides in the heavenly Chun mainland had reached over 100. What kind of concept was this? Although the heavenly Chun mainland had a population of over 100 billion, heavenly prides were not cabbages that could be found everywhere. In other dynasties, it was already considered good to have a few heavenly prides. However, there were now over 100 heavenly prides. It was precisely because of the appearance of so many heavenly prides that the world called this era the era of heavenly prides. This was because only heavenly prides could stir up a storm in this era. The era of heavenly prides was both fortunate and unfortunate, especially for those geniuses. Perhaps they were very talented, but it was a pity that they were born in the era of heavenly prides. This caused them to be destined to be unknown. Following the appearance of new heavenly prides, the 7 overlords also jointly released a heavenly prides list. The list listed the life stories of the 100 heavenly prides, as well as an analysis and ranking based on their battle records. The heavenly prides list, which was jointly released by the 7 overlords, attracted the attention of the world the moment it was released. Of course, Shao Chun was not on the list because everyone thought that Shao Chun had died in the Myriad Beast Mountain range. At the same time, within a few months, the heavenly prides of the 4 major domains had arrived in the central divine region and joined the 7 overlords. It was worth mentioning that Gu Lei and Su Mu of the 4 major domains had just arrived in the central divine region when they were challenged by the top heavenly prides of the central divine region. The top heavenly prides challenged the 10 great prides, but the results were unacceptable. Gu Lei and Su Mu were both defeated by the top heavenly prides of the central divine region. Because of this, many people naturally felt that the 4 major domains prides were too weak. In terms of strength, they were not as strong as the top heavenly prides of the central divine region. Fortunately, after Huang Gu accepted the challenge from the top heavenly prides of the central divine region, he won and saved some face for the 4 major domains prides. Even so, Gu Lei and Su Mu's defeat was a fact. As a result, the heavenly prides of the central divine region looked down on the heavenly prides of the other 4 major domains even more. If even the king of prides was defeated, how strong could the other heavenly prides be? The above was related to the movements of the heavenly Chun continent's heavenly prides in the past few months. The second news was that the number 1 family in the city of the Medicine King, the Yao family, would be holding the Medicine King's grand meeting 3 days later. When the time came, even the 7 overlords of the heavenly Dan Valley would send people to participate. The fact that people from the 7 overlords would be participating naturally attracted the attention of countless other major powers. It could be said that when the news of the Yao King's grand meeting was released, many people from the major powers had already rushed to the city of the Medicine King's grand meeting. That was because in the Medicine King's grand meeting, one could buy many medicinal pills that were rarely seen in the market. There were even rumors that heaven-tier medicinal pills might appear in this Medicine King's grand meeting. The Medicine King's grand meeting was very attractive. Of course, Shao Chun didn't care about that. What Shao Chun cared about was this Medicine King's grand meeting. It was said that the people from 9 Firmaments Palace's Heavenly Sword Peak would also be participating in this Medicine King's grand meeting. As the Heavenly Sword Peak of 9 Firmaments Palace, this matter had naturally caused a great commotion in the central divine region. Additionally, it was said that a Peak Lord from Heavenly Sword Peak would be leading the team to participate in this Medicine King's grand meeting. Unexpectedly, even Heavenly Sword Peak would be participating in this Medicine King's grand meeting. As he drank, Shao Chun thought to himself, I wonder who will be leading the team. Will it be Master or Senior Uncle? What about Senior Uncle? If so, all I need to do is to wait in the city of the Medicine King. When the time comes, I will return a heavenly sword peak with them. Begging for collection, begging for recommendation, begging for reward. Chapter 117. Since the people from a Sky Sword Peak were also coming to participate in the Medicine King's grand meeting, Xiao Chun did not need to go to the Nine Firmaments Palace alone. He only needed to wait for the people from the Sky Sword Peak to arrive and return with them. After hearing these two pieces of news by chance, Xiao Chun decided to wait for 3 days in the city of the Medicine King's grand meeting. On one hand, he wanted to see what was so special about the Medicine King's grand meeting. On the other hand, he wanted to meet up with the people from the Sky Sword Peak. After disappearing for so long, Qin Shiru and his master must be worried sick. As a big city in the Heavenly Pill Prefecture, the number of alchemists in the city of the Medicine King was indeed high. Moreover, the city of the Medicine King was the territory of the Yao family, and the Yao family old ancestor was a heaven-grade alchemist. Moreover, he was also a main elder of the Heavenly Dan Valley. Thus, the city of the Medicine King's reputation was resounding throughout the entire Central Divine region. Since he had nothing to do, Xiao Chun decided to take a stroll in the city of the King of Medicine. As a city where alchemists gathered, there was no lack of pharmacies in the city of the King of Medicine. Some herbs and pills that were hard to find in the outside world could be found in the city of the King of Medicine. Of course, the prices were also very expensive. After visiting more than 10 medicine shops, Xiao Chun also bought many medicinal pills for his cultivation. In just 4 to 6 hours, Xiao Chun had spent nearly 50,000 low-grade spirit stones. These spirit stones were given to him by Long Qing before he left. It was a total of 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Of course, these spirit stones were also obtained from the kingdom of demonic beasts. He had no concept of spirit stones. For Xiao Chun, spirit stones were just decorations if he did not spend them. Only by transforming these resources into strength would he be able to make the best use of them. After a round of shopping, Xiao Chun found an inn to stay in. He cultivated while waiting for the Medicine King's grand meeting to begin. 3 days passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, only 1 day was left. On this day, the people from the major forces arrived at the city of the Medicine King one after another. Some of the ordinary forces, naturally, could not receive the hospitality of the Yao family. They could only find inns to stay in. As for the 7 overlords, the Yao family naturally treated them as distinguished guests. Along with the other forces, the people from the Sky Sword Peak rode a golden-winged rock and arrived at the city of the Medicine King at noon. Song Long led the group. In addition, there were 8 Sky Sword Peak disciples accompanying him. When the Sky Sword Peak's people arrived, they were naturally invited into the Yao family. At the same time, the Sky Sword Peak's people also came with the Baijian Peak's people. Their leader was a Baijian Peak elder, whose cultivation was much higher than Song Long's. Only the 2 peaks from Nine Firmaments Palace had arrived. As the first of the 7 great overlords to arrive, the Yao family's family head, Yao Ming, and the Yao family's young master, Yao Chongqing, personally appeared to welcome them. As the patriarch of the Yao family, Yao Ming's cultivation was at the great circle of the Dao Gate realm. As for Yao Chongqing, as the young patriarch of the Yao family, he was also a top-notch genius. He was only 20 years old and had already reached the profound Ian stage. The father and son appeared together. Yao Ming first bowed to the elder leading the Baijian Peak. "Elder Hong, you have worked hard." Elder Hong's name was Hong Gang. He was at the minor success stage of the Dao transformation realm. Although Song Long had successfully broken through to the Dao transformation realm in the past few months, there was still a big gap between him and Hong Gang. Yao Ming's attitude towards Hong Gang was very respectful. At the same time, Yao Chongqing came before a female disciple of the Baijian Peak with a smile on his face. Junior sister He Lian. Facing He Lian, Yao Chongqing's eyes flashed with infatuation. The two of them naturally knew each other. Also, He Lian was the same as Yao Chongqing. She was also a peak-level genius and had been pursuing He Lian for a very long time. However, He Lian didn't seem to be interested in Yao Chongqing. He Lian's beautiful face. Facing Yao Chongqing's greeting, Helian only nodded slightly and did not say anything. Her attitude towards Yao Chongqing was very cold. Seeing this, Yao Chongqing laughed helplessly and then turned his gaze to the people from the Sky Sword Peak. Compared to the Baijian Peak, the lineup of the Sky Sword Peak was somewhat lacking. Putting aside Song Long's cultivation, there was not a single genius among the disciples of the Sky Sword Peak. Not even the most ordinary of top geniuses were there. Originally, the Sky Sword Peak had a king of geniuses, Xiao Chun. However, it was rumored that Xiao Chun had fallen in the Myriad Beast Mountain Range. Therefore, the Sky Sword Peak had no geniuses to hold down the fort. Moreover, the most laughable thing was that as more and more geniuses appeared, the various major forces were fighting for the geniuses to join them. Take the 9 peaks of the 9 Firmaments Palace, for example. In just a few months, the other 8 peaks had geniuses joining them. Moreover, there was more than one. Only the Sky Sword Peak did not have a single genius joining them after several months after Xiao Chen's fall. Not a single genius was willing to join the Sky Sword Peak. Additionally, the Sky Sword Peak had only just been established. Its foundation and strength were too weak. The 3 Peak Lords were only at the Dao Gate stage. They were not even comparable to the elders of the other peaks. Due to this, the Sky Sword Peak had become a laughingstock in 9 Firmaments Palace. Song Long and the other 2 were both furious and helpless in the face of this situation. Having no geniuses brought about a huge problem. When they went out to participate in activities with other forces, none of the disciples of the Sky Sword Peak could be brought out. After all, this was the era of geniuses. Without geniuses, one would naturally have no right to speak. It was as though they had returned to the time when they were in the East Sword Pavilion. This was not the first time. Song Long fantasized. If Xiao Chun was still alive and in the Sky Sword Peak, what would the Sky Sword Peak be like now? He did not dare to say anything else, but at least 1 or 2 geniuses would choose to join the Sky Sword Peak because of Xiao Chun. Unfortunately, Xiao Chun had already fallen. Yao Chongqing's eyes were filled with obvious contempt. His attitude was also a lot more indifferent. He bowed to Song Long and said indifferently, "Peak Lord Song Long, the accommodations have been prepared. Everyone, please take a rest. The Yao family had prepared a banquet for the Baijian Peak." However, the Yao family had chosen to ignore the Sky Sword Peak. Up until now, the Yao family head, Yao Ming, had not even greeted Song Long. With regards to the Yao family's actions, no one from the Baijian Peak stood up for the Sky Sword Peak. Elder Hong just casually bowed at Song Long and then left with Yao Ming. As for the people from the Sky Sword Peak, they were led to their accommodations by a servant of the Yao family. Naked contempt. No, this was already ignoring. Faced with such treatment, the 8 Sky Sword Peak disciples who followed Song Long all had ugly expressions on their faces. One of them even opened his mouth to speak. Snobs, isn't it just 2 top geniuses? If Senior Xiao Chun was still here, let's see if they would still dare to treat us like this. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 118. At that moment, all the disciples remembered Xiao Chun. When Xiao Chun had been there, the Eastern Sword Pavilion had been majestic. Xiao Chun had relied on his own strength to oppress the other 4 hidden dragons of the Dongyang region. That's right. If Senior Brother Xiao Chun was still alive, our Sky Sword Peak wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Another disciple sighed softly after hearing the disciple's words. The news that Xiao Chun had died in the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range was a huge blow to the Tianjian Peak. To put it bluntly, Xiao Chun represented hope for the Tianjian Peak. He represented the hope that the Tianjian Peak could return to its former glory and be on par with the other 8 peaks. However, the hope of everyone had fallen in the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range. The disciples sighed. Song Long, who was walking in front, was the same. They believed that as long as Xiao Chun was there, he would definitely be able to lead the Heavenly Sword Peak to glory, just like when they were in the Danyang domain. Xiao Chun had appeared out of nowhere and suppressed the 4 great hidden dragons. He had used his own strength to suppress the 4 great hidden dragons. If Xiao Chun could do it in the Eastern Sun domain, Song Long believed that Xiao Chun could do it in the central divine realm as well. After all, Xiao Chun was known as the only person who could be on par with Gudu Wuya a few months ago. Now, Gudu Wuya was recognized as the #1 king of pride in the Tianshan continent. Song Long sighed silently. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have allowed Xiao Chun to go to the 10,000 Beast mountain range. The Yao family had arranged for the Tianjian Peak to stay in a remote courtyard. As one of the 7 overlords, the Yao family had arranged for the Tianjian Peak to stay in a remote courtyard. Nobody came to visit them, and nobody paid any attention to them. It seemed like the Tianjian Peak had been forgotten. As time passed, the other 7 overlords arrived one after another. The ruler of the continent of the 9 Clouds was from the 9 Clouds Palace. The ruler of Mu Tian was from the Mu clan. The ruler of 10,000 Weapons was from the 10,000 Weapons Pavilion. The ruler of Burning Sky was from the Burning Sky sect. The ruler of Heavenly Pellet was from the Heavenly Dan Valley. The ruler of Divine Talisman was from the Divine Talisman sect. And the ruler of Divination was from the Divination Hall. That night, the Yao family could be said to be a boiling cauldron of voices as they held an unprecedented grand gathering. Even a Yao family old ancestor showed up to participate in this gathering. The experts of the 7 overlords also gathered together. At the same time, for this gathering, each of them brought along their respective heaven's prides. Although they were basically all top-notch geniuses, the Mu clan had brought along a peerless genius named Mu Feng. There were more than 10 heaven's prides present. However, Mu Feng was the only peerless genius. As such, Mu Feng naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. According to the division of strength, the heaven's prides were divided into 3 categories: top-notch heaven's prides, peerless heaven's prides, and king of heaven's prides. Top-notch heaven's prides could only be considered as stepping into the dividing line of heaven's prides. As for peerless heaven's prides, they could be considered as the true heaven's prides. As for king of heaven's prides, that was the king that stood above all the other heaven's prides. In the entire heavenly Qin mainland, although many heaven's prides had appeared, there were still only 10 king of heaven's prides. Of course, the list of 10 king of heaven's prides had also changed. For example, Gulei and Su Mu had long since been kicked out of the list of 10 king of heaven's prides. Additionally, due to the rumor that Xiao Chun had fallen, he was also kicked out of the list of 10 king of heaven's prides. With no king of heaven's prides, peerless heaven's prides were undoubtedly the strongest. Thus, Mu Feng became the leader of the many heaven's prides present. The atmosphere was lively. However, no one invited the people from Sky Sword Peak. Even Baijian Peak, which was also part of 9 Firmaments Palace, did not invite the Sky Sword Peak. The banquet continued until late at night. During the banquet, no one thought about the Sky Sword Peak. Early the next morning, the Medicine King's Grand Meeting was held as scheduled. People from various major forces rushed towards the Yao family. The Medicine King's Grand Meeting was held at the Yao family's main square. As the overlord of the city of the Medicine King, the Yao family's mansion occupied a large area. Even if tens of thousands of people gathered together, it would not be crowded. At the Yao family's main square, a high platform had been built. The Yao family old ancestor, a group of Yao family's upper echelons, and expert from the 7 overlord forces were seated on the high platform. Looking at the people on the high platform, the surrounding people quickly discovered a problem. There were no people from the Sky Sword Peak. Moreover, looking at the arrangement of the high platform, it seemed that the Yao family did not reserve a seat for the Sky Sword Peak. As one of 9 peaks of the overlord forces, 9 Firmaments Palace, the Sky Sword Peak was not welcomed. They did not even have the qualifications to sit on the same level as the Yao family. This scene caused the crowd to discuss spiritedly. While the crowd was discussing, Song Long finally brought the Sky Sword Peak disciples to the main square. As soon as they appeared, the surrounding people pointed at them and whispered. Seeing that there was no seat for the Sky Sword Peak on the high platform, Song Long's face sank. At this time, Yao Ming also pretended to stand up and said, "Song Long Peak Master, I am really sorry. Due to the limited space, The Sky Sword Peak seat is really not available. I hope everyone from the Sky Sword Peak can understand. Of course, my Yao family will also compensate everyone from the Sky Sword Peak. Although it was an apology, there was no trace of guilt on his face. As for the compensation, when it came from Yao Ming's mouth, it was more like charity. Yao Ming did not give the Sky Sword Peak any face. Hearing this, everyone looked at Tsang Long, wanting to see how Tsang Long would respond. This was not giving any face at all. If Tsang Long tolerated it, the Sky Sword Peak's face would be completely lost. In that case, my Sky Sword Peak will not participate in this Medicine King's conference. Under everyone's gaze, Tsang Long coldly snorted. Since the Yao family humiliated the Sky Sword Peak in front of the major forces, Tsang Long naturally would not choose to tolerate it. However, just as Tsang Long's voice fell, the peerless genius of the Mu family, Mu Feng, suddenly spoke. His words were full of contempt. You speak as if we are begging you to participate. Although the Sky Sword Peak is one of the 9 peaks of the 9 Firmaments Palace, it is only in name. I will not talk about the strength of the 3 Peak Masters. I will only ask one question. Does your Sky Sword Peak have any geniuses? You don't even have a peerless genius, yet you still have the nerve to sit on the same level as us? What a joke. As a junior, Mu Feng's words were very unpleasant. Hearing this, Tsang Long's face turned even gloomier. However, his strength was inferior, so he could not do anything to Mu Feng. After all, there was still a Dao transformation stage elder of the Mu family sitting beside Mu Feng. Tsang Long was thoroughly humiliated, and the Sky Sword Peak didn't have any heaven's pride. Feeling the pitiful gazes of the surrounding people, Tsang Long only wanted to leave as soon as possible. However, at this moment, a white-clothed man holding a crimson longsword walked in with large strides. The tip of the sword was pressed against the throat of a Yao family guard. His gaze landed directly on Mu Feng as he spoke in an indifferent tone. Is the mouth of the Mu family so foul? Mu Qing is like this, and so are you. A mere peerless genius dares to speak such arrogant words? It would be better if your Mu family's king of prides came. Chapter 119. Holding a 3-foot-long sword, he strode into the main courtyard. Hearing this, Mu Feng's face sank. Do you want to die? The white-clothed young man was naturally Shao Chun. Today was the day of the Medicine King's conference. But who would have thought that an invitation was required to participate? Shao Chun did not have an invitation, so the guards outside did not allow him to enter. Left with no choice, Shao Chun could only fight his way in. Shao Chun had just arrived at the entrance of the main yard when he heard Mu Feng insulting the Tsang Dragon, which led to the current scene. Perhaps because they did not react in time, when they saw Shao Chun holding a Yao family guard and striding in, no one recognized Shao Chun's identity. Mu Feng shouted coldly. Yao Changqing also shouted angrily. Who are you? How dare you trespass into my Yao family? You are simply lawless. Men, take him down. Mu Feng and Yao Changqing shouted one after another. But at this time, Tsang Long and the Sky Sword Peak disciples were stunned. They naturally recognized Shao Chun at a glance. They had always thought that Shao Chun had fallen in the Thousand Beast Mountain range. Now that they saw Shao Chun again, they naturally did not recover for a while. Only when Yao Changqing ordered people to take Shao Chun did Tsang Long come back to his senses. Immediately, a terrifying aura rose from Tsang Long's body. He took a step forward and instantly arrived beside Shao Chun. He looked at Yao Changqing on the high platform and shouted. You dare! Shao Chun was still alive, which made Tsang Long very happy. At the same time, Yao Changqing's words instantly ignited Tsang Long's anger. It was no exaggeration to say that in the eyes of Tsang Long and the other 2 old men, anyone in the Sky Sword Peak could die except for Shao Chun. As long as Shao Chun was alive, the Sky Sword Peak would never fall. Therefore, at this time, when Yao Changqing ordered people to take Shao Chun down, how could Tsang Long endure it? He was immediately enraged. Facing the furious Tsang Long, Yao Changqing was slightly stunned. He thought to himself, is this old man crazy? He could endure the humiliation just now, but now he actually went crazy because of this kid Yao Changqing, Yao Ming, if you dare to touch my Sky Sword Peak's King of Pride, my Sky Sword Peak will definitely annihilate your entire Yao family. Ignoring Yao Changqing's stunned expression, Song Long directly looked at Yao Ming and shouted, Sky Sword Peak's King of Pride? Hearing Song Long's words, Yao Changqing was even more puzzled. How could this Sky Sword Peak have a King of Pride? They didn't even have a peerless genius. Yao Changqing did not understand the meaning behind Song Long's words. However, he soon thought of something and stared intently at Xiao Chun. After a few breaths, Yao Changqing's expression changed drastically. He was not the only one. Many of the people present reacted the same way. Clearly, they had recognized Xiao Chen's identity. Xiao Chen's image had appeared in the sky when the sovereign had bestowed him with his name, and everyone had seen it. Xiao Chun. Many people recognized Xiao Chun. They didn't expect the Sky Sword Peak's King of Pride to still be alive. Wasn't it rumored that Xiao Chun had died in the 10,000 Beast Mountain range? How could he still be alive? Xiao Chen's appearance shocked everyone. At the same time, it disgusted Mu Feng and Yao Changqing, as if they had eaten a fly. Previously, they had said that the Sky Sword Peak was only in name and did not have a peerless genius. But now, in the blink of an eye, the Sky Sword Peak had a King of Pride. Mu Feng's expression was unsightly, but soon he sneered. He looked at Xiao Chun and pretended to be disdainful. Xiao Chun, rumor has it that you died in the 10,000 Beast Mountain range. But even if you're not dead, so what? The King of Pride of the 4 great domains is only in appearance. Su Mu and Gu Lei have already been kicked out of the top 10 King of Pride. Do you still think you're one of the top 10 King of Pride? Su Mu and Gu Lei have been defeated by the peerless geniuses of the Central Divine Region. Mu Feng's purpose in saying this was to show that Xiao Chun was only an appearance, and that he did not deserve the title of King of Pride. Hearing Mu Feng's words, Xiao Chun calmly took a step forward. He first gave Song Long a reassuring look, then looked at Mu Feng and said indifferently, All right, since that's the case, I, Xiao Chun, will challenge all the geniuses present here in front of everyone. You can all come at me together. Xiao Chun did not argue with Mu Feng. He decided to use his strength to do the talking. As soon as these words came out, everyone went crazy. What was going on? Xiao Chun wanted to challenge all the geniuses present, and they could all come at him together. This was simply crazy. One had to know that although everyone present was a peerless genius, and only Mu Feng was a peerless genius, there were 14 of them. Even if Xiao Chun was once the King of Pride, wasn't this a little too arrogant? Moreover, Xiao Chun was not challenging them one by one, but all at once. In other words, Xiao Chun alone would have to fight more than 10 geniuses. No one had expected Xiao Chun to say such a thing. Mu Feng and Yao Changqing's expressions turned ugly, while the 8 disciples of the Sky Sword Peak were extremely excited. No one knew who took the lead, but the 8 of them immediately shouted, Senior Brother Xiao Chun, Senior Brother Xiao Chun, Senior Brother Xiao Chun. Under the cheers of the Sky Sword Peak disciples, Xiao Chun pointed the tip of his sword at the ground. He looked at Mu Feng and said indifferently, What? You don't dare? Didn't you just say that I'm only an appearance? Now that I've given you the chance, you don't dare to accept my challenge. Come on, all the geniuses present can attack. Today I, Xiao Chun, will sweep all of you away. My Sky Sword Peak doesn't have any geniuses, but we do have the King of Pride. Geniuses are just ants to my Sky Sword Peak. His words were filled with heroic spirit, one man and one sword, challenging all 14 geniuses present. However, in the face of Xiao Chen's bold words, none of the 14 geniuses present dared to reply. They all chose to remain silent. Looking at the geniuses who chose to remain silent, the various major forces present couldn't help but whisper to each other, sweeping all the geniuses, among those of the same generation. I'm afraid only the 10 King of Pride has such a heroic spirit. Is this the King of Pride? He is indeed the King of Geniuses. As geniuses, they can only bow their heads in front of the King of Pride. The Sky Sword Peak, which had already lost all face today, turned the tide because of Xiao Chen's appearance. Looking at Xiao Chen's back, one man and one sword, sweeping all the geniuses, Song Long's turbid eyes turned slightly red. He's back. My Sky Sword Peak's King of Pride is back. Even if I'm facing a dozen geniuses, I'll sweep them away with one sword. This is the domineering aura of the Sky Sword Peak's King of Pride, Xiao Chun. Just like when he was in the Eastern Sun region, one man and one sword, he suppressed the 4 great hidden dragons and the 4 great heads. Even Song Long was extremely excited, let alone the 8 Sky Sword Peak disciples. At this moment, their eyes were already brimming with tears. The sullenness of the past few months had vanished with Xiao Chen's appearance. Who asked you to be so arrogant? Now that our Sky Sword Peak's King of Pride is here, why isn't anyone venting their anger? Didn't you just mock our Sky Sword Peak for not having any geniuses? The 8 Sky Sword Peak disciples all had such thoughts as they stared at Xiao Chun. Chapter 120. Xiao Chen's overbearingness had exceeded everyone's expectations. Even the experts of the older generation on the high platform had not expected Xiao Chun to be so overbearing. None of the Sky Prides responded to Xiao Chun. Seeing that, Xiao Chun pointed a sword at Mu Feng and shouted, "Mu Feng, do you dare to fight me?" With that shout, Xiao Chun had effectively cut off Mu Feng's path of retreat. If Mu Feng did not dare to accept the challenge, he would become a laughingstock. He might even lose his title as a peerless genius. What was a genius? A genius? If one did not even have the courage to fight, what qualifications did one have to be called a genius? Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Mu Feng's face darkened to the extreme. Next, he exchanged glances with Yao Chongqing, who was beside him. Mu Feng then shouted, "Arrogant! Everyone, this Xiao Chun is so arrogant. If we do not teach him a lesson today, how can we still be called geniuses?" What a joke. Mu Feng's words sounded righteous. However, everyone knew that he did not have the courage to face Xiao Chun alone. He wanted to drag all the other geniuses down with him. Understanding Mu Feng's intentions, Xiao Chun did not say anything about it. Instead, he simply smiled disdainfully. Under Mu Feng's instigation, the other geniuses began to speak up as well. After all, Xiao Chun had included all of them in his words earlier. With the exception of Baijian Peaks, He Lian, the other 13 geniuses came to surround Xiao Chun. The reason He Lian did not take action was because both Baijian Peak and Heavenly Sword Peak were part of 9 Firmament's palace. Additionally, He Lian also wanted to see just how extraordinary Xiao Chun was. Her beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Xiao Chun. Since Xiao Chen's appearance, He Lian's gaze had never left him. Xiao Chen's handsome appearance and indifferent aura seemed to have a magical power that attracted He Lian, making her involuntarily fall for him. Looking at the battle that was about to break out, He Lian whispered softly, "Can we win?" He asked himself if Xiao Chun could win if he was besieged by 13 geniuses at the same time. While He Lian was paying attention to Xiao Chun, Mu Feng shouted, and the 13 Sky Prides immediately attacked Xiao Chun. They didn't have the confidence to fight him one-on-one. After all, Xiao Chun was the only genius other than Gudu Wuya who had broken through the 9 heavens' divine thunder. Therefore, Xiao Chun was naturally not an ordinary person. Even if he couldn't win one-on-one, they didn't believe that Xiao Chun could win if it was 13 against 1. Even if he was once known as the Proud King, Xiao Chun had disappeared for several months. Did he really have the strength of a Proud King? After all, Su Mu and Gu Lei had been forcefully kicked out of the Proud King list. The 13 Sky Prides attacked at the same time. Seeing this, Xiao Chen's expression remained unchanged. He immediately swept out with the Scarlet Cloud sword in his hand. Sword light flashed and instantly enveloped 3 of the Sky Prides. Fast, extremely fast. In the past few months, Xiao Chen's cultivation had not only broken through from the Arcane Ian initial success stage to the Arcane Ian small perfection stage, but his sword chi had also successfully reached the Great Perfection stage. He was only one step away from comprehending sword intent. With the addition of sword intent, The sword light whizzed past. Before it even came into contact, the Sky Prides already felt a fatal threat. Without any hesitation, they all chose to dodge. And it was this dodge that happened to fall into Xiao Chen's trap. He moved his feet and instantly used the clear shadow steps. His figure immediately rushed towards the Sky Prides who were busy dodging. They were already busy dodging Xiao Chen's sword chi. Now that they were faced with Xiao Chen's sudden attack, their movements were in a mess. Unsurprisingly, they were quickly defeated by Xiao Chen. However, he had already defeated 3 Sky Prides at the beginning of the fight. Seeing this, many people couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. So strong. Xiao Chen's strength was indeed very strong. Moreover, as the battle continued, Xiao Chen's terrifying physical strength was on full display. The blood pill condensed from 3 drops of the Beast Emperor's blood essence had allowed Xiao Chen's physical body to reach the limit of the arcane Ian stage. Based on the strength of his physical body alone, Xiao Chen could be considered a peerless Sky Pride. He was no weaker than those body-refining cultivators. Relying on his powerful physical body, Xiao Chen was like a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus as he rampaged through the crowd. For some of the attacks that weren't fatal, Xiao Chen didn't even bother dodging. He directly chose to exchange injury for injury. It was an extremely violent and direct way of fighting. Xiao Chen dared to exchange injury for injury, but the Sky Prides didn't. After all, they didn't have a physical body as strong as Xiao Chen's. After an intense battle, the Sky Prides became more and more alarmed as they fought. The same thought emerged in their minds. Is this the strength of the King of Pride? He's so strong. He's on a completely different level. His physical body? He's practically a monster in human form. After Xiao Chen defeated 7 geniuses, the remaining geniuses all subconsciously chose to retreat. They did not dare to do it again. They really did not dare to do it again. They didn't have any grudges to begin with. Now that Xiao Chen's combat strength was so strong, these Sky Prides weren't fools. There was no need for them to bite the bullet and risk their lives against Xiao Chen. Everyone chose to retreat. Xiao Chen didn't chase after them. Only Mu Feng and Yao Chongqing remained. Xiao Chen didn't intend to let them go. Xiao Chen took a step forward and arrived directly in front of Yao Chongqing. He flicked the long sword in his hand, and the tip of the sword slashed across Yao Chongqing's shoulder. Yao Chongqing screamed as a wound opened up on his shoulder. Then, Xiao Chen kicked out, and Yao Chongqing was sent flying, crashing into the wall of the Yao family's main courtyard before coming to a stop. The Jianyi kick had seriously injured Yao Chongqing. After Yao Chongqing was dealt with, only Mu Feng was left. As a peerless monster, Mu Feng's strength was naturally stronger than Yao Chongqing's. But to Xiao Chen, it didn't matter. No one dared to attack Xiao Chen anymore. Only Mu Feng was left. Facing Xiao Chen's attacks, Mu Feng was suffering. Xiao Chen's sword was not only fast, but also terrifyingly powerful. He was completely at a disadvantage. He was completely suppressed by Xiao Chen. In the end, as expected, Mu Feng was stabbed by Xiao Chen's sword. Then, everyone only saw a flash of sword light. The scarlet-edged sword was already at Mu Feng's neck. Just an inch more, and Xiao Chen would be able to cut off Mu Feng's head. The aura of death completely enveloped Mu Feng's body. Xiao Chen didn't kill him. After all, the Mu family's experts were still around. But today, the Sky Sword Peak's reputation had been ruined. Xiao Chen wouldn't let Mu Feng go so easily. Xiao Chen kicked Mu Feng in the knee. The excruciating pain caused Mu Feng to kneel before Xiao Chen with both knees on the ground. Xiao Chen looked down at Mu Feng from above and said with an indifferent expression, "You dare to insult my Sky Sword Peak? In front of me, you are no different from an ant. Do you understand? Remember, the next time your Mu family wants to insult my Sky Sword Peak, you better let the Mu family's King of Pride come personally. Trash like you is not enough." Chapter 121. You're not worthy. Ask your Mu family's King of Pride to come. Xiao Chen's indifferent words echoed in Mu Feng's ears. Mu Feng's face was filled with anger. In the end, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. It could be said that Mu Feng's reputation had been completely wiped out. Xiao Chen looked at the unconscious Mu Feng and slowly sheathed the scarlet-edged sword. At the same time, the elder of the Mu clan on the high platform shouted coldly, "Umph, arrogant junior, you're courting death." The Mu family elder was at the Dao transformation stage, but Xiao Chun did not show any fear. Instead, he said calmly, "What's wrong? Is the elder here after beating up the younger one?" Mu Feng's humiliation naturally represented the Mu family's humiliation, which was why the elder of the Mu family spoke up. Hearing Xiao Chen's rebuttal, the elder of the Mu family's face became even more gloomy. A wave of minor perfection, Dao, transformation realm, spiritual energy erupted from his body. His eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at Xiao Chun and said word by word, "Xiao Chun, do you know the consequences of angering the Mu family?" Xiao Chen's humiliation to the Mu family had made the Mu family elder want to kill him. As soon as the Mu family elder finished speaking, Song Long stepped in front of Xiao Chun and looked directly at the Mu family elder. It's a little embarrassing for the Mu family to bully the younger generation. Anyone could feel the faint murderous intent emanating from the elder of the Mu family, so Song Long immediately stepped forward to protect Xiao Chun. Upon hearing Song Long's words, the elder from the Mu clan did not reply. Instead, he stared deeply at Xiao Chun before slowly withdrawing the aura from his body. He then ordered his men to carry the unconscious Mu Feng away. After that, he no longer spoke. Xiao Chun was the king of pride of the Celestial Sword Peak. It was said that the Nine Clouds sovereign thought highly of Xiao Chun. Therefore, the Mu family elder knew that he couldn't kill Xiao Chun, at least not in front of so many people. With his strength, if he insisted on killing Xiao Chun, Song Long would not be able to stop him. However, if Xiao Chun died, then the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds would definitely come and punish him. At that time, the two overlords would start a war, or the Mu family elder would hand him over to the ruler of the continent. Anyway, no matter what, he would die. Therefore, even though the Mu family elder's murderous intent, he didn't attack. Even a Mu family elder had chosen to endure, so the Yao family elder didn't say anything. After all, they were not as strong as the Mu family elder. The Yao family also chose to remain silent, but Xiao Chen obviously didn't intend to leave the matter at that. His gaze fell directly on the Yao family patriarch Yao Ming, and said in an indifferent tone, "Yao family patriarch, just now you said that the space is limited, so there is no need for us to arrange a seat for the Sky Sword Peak. So there is no need to trouble yourself. Just give your Yao family seat to us. My Sky Sword Peak will not care about this." The Yao family elder wanted to make things difficult for the Celestial Sword Peak. Therefore, Xiao Chun wanted to sit on the Celestial Sword Peak stage and make the Yao family elder roll off the stage. Xiao Chen's words were very straightforward, and the meaning was also very obvious. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the Yao family head's face immediately sank. "What do you mean? Xiao Chun wanted to drive the Yao family off the stage?" As the host, Xiao Chun actually dared to drive the Yao family off the stage. With a gloomy face, Yao Ming replied coldly, "Xiao Chun, don't go too far. I admit that my Yao family was negligent in this matter, but we are willing to compensate for it. Don't be so aggressive." Aggressive? Yao family elder, you just said that this was your Yao family's negligence. Since that's the case, isn't it reasonable for your Yao family to give up your seat to us? Moreover, look at the people sitting on the stage. Which one of them isn't a member of an overlord force? Only your Yao family is a small family in the city. The strongest person in your family is only at the Dao transformation stage. In the younger generation, you only have Yao Chongqing, a waste. If the Mu family has a king of pride that I am interested in, then what does your Yao family have? So, what right does your Yao family have to be on equal footing with us, the overlord forces? When he heard Yao Ming's words, Xiao Chun shouted loudly. He was completely unafraid of Yao Ming's status. Of course, a mere Yao family elder was not enough to make Xiao Chun care. These words were like a slap in the face. Yao Ming looked at Xiao Chun with a face full of anger. In response, Xiao Chun calmly looked back at him. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. It was a very simple principle. If your Yao family wanted to humiliate my Sky Sword Peak, then I will naturally humiliate your Yao family. Not knowing how to refute Xiao Chen's words, the Yao family elder, who was sitting on one side of the Heaven Dan Valley, finally spoke. Yao Ming, take your people and leave. As an elder of the Heaven Dan Valley, the Yao family elder naturally sat together with the people of the Heaven Dan Valley. The elder personally spoke. Hearing this, Yao Ming's face sank. As the organizer, he was actually driven off the high platform. His face was ashen, but Yao Ming did not say anything in the end. He led the people of the Yao family down the high platform, while Xiao Chun, Song Long, and the people of the Sky Sword Peak sat on the seats of the Yao family. No one would have thought that the final result would be like this. The Sky Sword Peak, which was supposed to lose face, had actually made the Yao family unable to show their face. Yao Ming led his people down the high platform. At this time, the Yao family elder also took the initiative to apologize to Song Long Peak Master. I hope you can forgive me for today's matter. From the beginning, no one paid attention to the Yao family elder, but now, the Yao family elder personally apologized, and his attitude was extremely respectful and sincere. All these changes were brought about by Xiao Chun. In the face of the Yao family elder's apology, Song Long nodded and did not make things difficult for him. The matter seemed to have come to an end, but the hatred in Yao Chongqing's eyes grew stronger. Then, accompanied by Yao Ming's opening speech, the Medicine King's Grand Meet officially began. Although it was called the Medicine King's Grand Meet, it was more like an auction, except that the items being auctioned were some spiritual herbs or elixirs. Of course, the elixirs and spiritual herbs in the Medicine King's Grand Meet were relatively rare in the outside world. Today was the day of the auction, but tomorrow there was a highlight, and that was the Deputy Valley Master of the Heaven Dan Valley coming to the city of the Medicine King to recruit disciples. The Heaven Dan Valley had a total of 9 Deputy Valley Masters, and their cultivation was at the Tao Sovereign Realm, equivalent to the 9 Peak Masters of the 9 Cloud Palace. They were extremely powerful, and their status was only below the 7 Great Rulers. The attraction of such a powerhouse coming to recruit disciples was needless to say. Many of the forces present had just come because they had heard the news in advance. It could be said that today's auction was just an appetizer, and tomorrow's disciple recruitment was the real main course. Once chosen, it was absolutely like a crow turning into a phoenix, and one could become a disciple of a Tao sovereign expert in one step. Chapter 122. With the exception of the disciples from the 7 overlord forces, the disciples from the other forces were all looking forward to the disciple recruitment. Xiao Chan sat on a chair with nothing to do as he watched the medicinal pills being auctioned off. Truth be told, the medicinal pills were not bad. However, he did not need them for the time being. Since he did not need them, he was not interested in them. The other disciples from Heavenly Sword Peak, on the other hand, bought some medicinal pills one after another. Seeing them compete with each other, Xiao Chun smiled. It seemed that after arriving at 9 Firmament's Palace, their lives had improved considerably. They also had a lot more spirit stones in their pockets. In the past, when they were still in the Eastern Sun region, the disciples would only be able to spend a few hundred low-grade spirit stones. Now, however, they could casually spend over 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. Of course, such a change could not be separated from 9 Firmament's Palace's support. Heavenly Sword Peak had just returned to 9 Firmament's Palace. Its strength could be said to be at the bottom of the 9 peaks. Compared to the other 8 peaks, it was far inferior. As such, the ruler of the continent of the 9 Firmaments hoped that Heavenly Sword Peak could grow as quickly as possible. Thus, when it came to cultivation resources, the ruler of the continent of the 9 Firmaments would naturally favor Heavenly Sword Peak, especially Tsang Long, Tsang Xian, and Tsang Yen. The ruler of the continent of the 9 Firmaments hoped that they could break through to the Tao Transformation Stage, Tao King Stage, or even Tao Sovereign Stage as soon as possible. Under normal circumstances, the 9 Peak Lords of 9 Firmaments Palace were all Tao Sovereigns. Tsang Xian and the other two's cultivation bases were simply too low. They were even inferior to the elders of the other 8 peaks. This cannot go on. There was no need to worry about cultivation resources for now. It could even be said that Heavenly Sword Peak's cultivation resources had surpassed the other 8 peaks due to the ruler of the continent of the 9 firmaments. However, such a situation would not last for long. Thus, the disciples of Heavenly Sword Peak had to make use of this golden period to increase their overall strength as soon as possible. A faint smile appeared on his face as he thought about the Heavenly Sword Peak. Xiaochen did not notice that not far away, a pair of beautiful eyes had not left him since the beginning. She had been sizing him up with a thoughtful expression. Helian, a genius from Baijian Peak. After witnessing Xiao Chun defeat 13 geniuses with her own eyes, Helian could not help but fall in love with Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun had a handsome appearance, an ethereal temperament, an indifferent attitude, and a terrifying strength. All of these added together made Xiao Chun an irresistible attraction. Ever since she was young, Helian had seen many geniuses. However, until now, none of them could compare to Xiao Chun. No matter in which aspect, Xiao Chun had become Helian's dream lover. Xiao Chun didn't notice Helian's infatuated gaze. While he was idling around, a pill called the 100 Years Pill was brought up for auction. There were 2 pills in total, and the starting price was 2,000 low-grade spirit stones. Seeing these 200-years-old pills, Xiao Chen's interest was finally piqued. These 100-years-old pills were useless to him, but they were extremely useful to his parents. Xiao Qing, and by Ryue's cultivation talent, could only be considered ordinary. So even though Xiao Chun had given them a lot of cultivation resources, the 2 of them were only at the Earth Clear mirror entry stage. As the name implied, these 100-years-old pills could increase a person's lifespan. As for his parents, Xiao Chun didn't need them to have strong combat strength. He only wanted them to live a long life. Whenever he thought of his parents turning into a pile of yellow soil one day, Xiao Chun felt extremely reluctant. Therefore, pills that could increase one's lifespan were better for Xiao Chun. He didn't need them, but he could give them to his parents. Xiao Chun wanted them to live a long life. It was best if the family could never be separated. Without any hesitation, Xiao Chun opened his mouth after a small faction's patriarch bid 5,000. 10,000, he directly doubled the price. Xiao Chun wouldn't frown if he was buying things for himself. Xiao Chun didn't care about the price when he was buying things for his parents. In Xiao Chun's opinion, even if he had to pay 100,000 low-grade spirit stones today, he would obtain these 200-years-old pills. He was determined to obtain them. In the end, after a round of bidding, Xiao Chun finally bought the 200-years-old pills at the price of 30,000 low-grade spirit stones. He carefully stored them in his storage ring. When he had time to return to Lingshan City, he would give them to his parents. A smile unconsciously appeared on his face. Xiao Chun did not bid for the rest of the auction. The auction continued until dusk when it finally ended. After that, the Yao family arranged a banquet and invited people from all the major forces to gather in one place. The banquet was held in the Yao family's main square. Maids quickly arranged the tables, chairs, bowls, and chopsticks. Ordinary factions ate in the main courtyard, while the 7 overlord factions, as well as the host, the Yao family, ate in the main hall. No one looked down on the sky, Sword Peak anymore. They sat down with Song Long and the others and ate the delicacies meticulously prepared by the Yao family. No one was interested in chatting with others. However, at this time, Helian, who was wearing a long green dress, took the initiative to approach Xiao Chun. Helian was the only female Heaven's Pride who came this time, so she naturally received a lot of attention. Moreover, she was also a beauty. At this time, seeing Helian take the initiative to approach Xiao Chun, the other Heaven's Prides, who originally had fantasies about Helian, all revealed a helpless smile. If it wasn't for the incident during the day, these Heaven's Prides would definitely not give up. However, after experiencing Xiao Chen's strength, they didn't dare to provoke Xiao Chun. Moreover, anyone could see that Helian already had a good impression of Xiao Chun. Wasn't fighting with Xiao Chun the same as lighting a lamp in the toilet? Wasn't that courting death? Taking the initiative to approach Xiao Chun, Lian blushed and said softly, "That, senior brother Xiao Chun, can I sit here?" She was obviously a little shy. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Sure." Happily sitting down beside Xiao Chun, Lian constantly tried to find a topic to chat with Xiao Chun. However, throughout the entire process, although Xiao Chun appeared to be very approachable, he gave off an unapproachable feeling. Xiao Chun didn't have any feelings for Lian. Although she was pretty, she was still far from Qin Shu, who had awakened the Yin's spirit body. Xiao Chun naturally wouldn't be charmed by her appearance. The atmosphere of the banquet was extraordinarily lively. Song Long was also invited to drink with the powerhouses of the 7 major forces, while Xiao Chun and He Lian chatted casually. Just as everyone was enjoying themselves, Mu Feng and Yao Changqing gathered together in Mu Feng's room with gloomy expressions. Mu Feng looked at Yao Changqing and said coldly, "Xiao Chun, I will not let you off." Due to their injuries, and perhaps because they were too ashamed to face others, Mu Feng and Yao Changqing didn't attend the banquet today. Their hearts were filled with hatred, as if they couldn't wait to swallow Xiao Chun alive. Facing Mu Feng's cold scolding, Yao Changqing's eyes flickered with a sinister glint. "Don't worry, Brother Mu. I have already thought of a way to humiliate Xiao Chun. Please add, recommend, reward." Chapter 123. Don't worry, Brother Mu. I've already thought of a way to make Xiao Chun lose all his face. Both of them hated Xiao Chun. Now that Yao Changqing said that he had thought of a way to make Xiao Chun lose all his face, Mu Feng immediately became spirited. He looked at Yao Changqing expectantly and asked, "What is it, Brother Yao? Let's hear it." "Don't worry, Brother Mu. Isn't the Deputy Valley Master of the Dan Valley coming to recruit disciples tomorrow? At that time, we will think of a way to force Xiao Chun to participate. Although his strength is heaven-defying, I am absolutely confident that I can defeat Xiao Chun in terms of alchemy. When the time comes, I will definitely take revenge for the humiliation I suffered today in front of everyone." Yao Changqing sneered. In terms of strength, Mu Feng and Yao Changqing were no match for Xiao Chun. Therefore, they could only take revenge through other means. Tomorrow was the best opportunity. When the Deputy Valley Master of the Dan Valley recruited disciples, they naturally had to go through an assessment. Only those who had excellent talent in alchemy could be chosen by the Deputy Valley Master. Xiao Chun's strength was strong, but how much did Xiao Chun know about alchemy? Yao Changqing was from the Yao family and had been in contact with alchemy since he was young. He was confident that if they competed in alchemy, he could defeat Xiao Chun hundreds of times. After hearing Yao Changqing's words, Mu Feng let out a cold laugh. At the same time, his attitude towards Yao Changqing was much better. He put his arm around Yao Changqing's shoulder and said with a smile on his face, "Good, good. Brother Yao's plan is wonderful. Let's do it. Tomorrow, I want to see what kind of expression Xiao Chun will have when he makes a fool of himself in front of everyone." Haha. In order to take revenge on Xiao Chun, the two of them came up with such a vicious plan, and Xiao Chun was still unaware of it. After the banquet ended, they followed the people from the Sky Sword Peak back to their residence. Of course, it was no longer the side courtyard from yesterday. Instead, it was a main courtyard with a beautiful environment. Furthermore, there were even maids specially prepared for the people from the Sky Sword Peak. Song Long took Xiao Chun to the study. After such a long time, Xiao Chun had not only made it out of the All-Beast Mountain Range alive, but also made it to the Central Divine Realm. Song Long naturally had a lot to ask Xiao Chun. Knowing what Azure Dragon wanted to ask him, Xiao Chun had already prepared an answer. He did not mention the kingdom of monster beasts, Chunling, or Longqing. He only said that he was lucky to have passed through the 10,000 Beast Mountain Range and arrived in the Central Plains. Song Long did not pursue the matter. He was just asking casually. Since Xiao Chun was still alive, nothing else mattered. After chatting with Azure Dragon for half an hour, Xiao Chun returned to his room alone and began to cultivate. After a silent night, the next morning arrived. The atmosphere in the Yao family was even more lively. It was only early in the morning, but people from various major forces had already flocked to the Yao family's main square. Today was the day that the deputy valley master of the heavenly Dan Valley was accepting a disciple. He was a super expert in the Dao sovereign realm. In the entire heavenly Qin continent, his position was second only to the 7 rulers. Everyone was naturally excited that such a person was accepting a disciple. It was still early, but the Yao family's main square was already crowded with people. When Xiao Chun and the others arrived, the entire main square was already packed. Unlike yesterday, other than the high platform at the front of the main plaza, the center of the main plaza had also been cleared out. Moreover, there were a total of 100 wooden tables and an equal number of pill furnaces placed there. Obviously, these should be used for the assessment later. The 7 overlords had arrived one after another. Today, the Yao family did not make any stupid mistakes. They arranged seats for the Sky Sword Peak and sat down directly on the high platform. Then, everyone began to wait. As for the person they were waiting for, it was naturally the Deputy Valley Master of the Heavenly Dan Valley. Patiently waiting, no one dared to show the slightest dissatisfaction. After all, the Deputy Valley Master was a super expert in the Dao Sovereign Realm. After waiting for about an hour, a middle-aged man wearing a Dan Yun white robe and holding a wine gourd appeared in the sky above the Yao family's main square without any warning. Seeing this person appear, the experts of the 7 overlords on the high platform were the first to come back to their senses. Immediately, many people recognized the identity of this person. Elder Hong Gang of the Baijian Peak said softly, "I didn't expect it to be the 9th Valley Master, Dan Yun Dao Master. The Heavenly Elixir Valley had a Valley Master, who was the Heavenly Elixir Ruler. Under the Heavenly Elixir Ruler were 9 Deputy Valley Masters, who were also 9 Great Dao Venerables. Dao Master Dan Yun ranked 9th among the 9 Deputy Valley Masters. Although he was ranked last, this did not mean that Dan Yun Dao Master was weak. On the contrary, among the 9 Deputy Valley Masters of the Heavenly Dan Valley, Dan Yun Dao Master's strength was enough to rank in the top 3. Moreover, Dan Yun Dao Master was the youngest among the 9 Deputy Valley Masters and was regarded as the most likely person to become the next Heavenly Pill Sovereign. No one expected that Dan Yun Dao Master would come to accept a disciple. It was said that Dan Yun Dao Master had never accepted a disciple in his life, and only his daughter had received all his teachings. Now, his daughter was also one of the 10 proud kings, and could be said to be the number 1 heaven's pride in the heavenly Dan Valley. Recognizing Dan Yun Dao Master, the experts of the 7 overlords all stood up and saluted. "Greetings, Dan Yun Dao Master. Everyone has been waiting for a long time." Facing the salutes of the crowd, Dan Yun Dao Master burped, and his body swayed as he spoke. He did not look like a Dao Master at all. Dan Yun Dao Master came to the main seat that had been prepared for him and sat down. Today, Dan Yun Dao Master was the main character. At the same time, he was also the one with the highest cultivation and the highest status. Dan Yun Dao Master sat down, looked around at the crowd, and then said with a slightly tipsy face, "Everyone, today I will only accept 1 disciple, and that person will be my last disciple. I will only accept 1 disciple in my life, so I can't guarantee that I will accept any of you as my disciple today. If I don't like any of you, then I can only give up. Only 1 disciple, and that person would be his last disciple." Hearing this, the crowd instantly became excited. A last disciple and an ordinary disciple were 2 completely different concepts. Of course, the requirements for a last disciple were naturally higher than an ordinary disciple. However, once one became the last disciple of Dan Yun Dao Master, the treatment would definitely be many times better than an ordinary disciple. He said bluntly that he would only accept 1 disciple in his lifetime, and the city of the King of Medicine was only the first stop of Dao Master Dan Yun. If there was no one he liked, Dao Master Dan Yun would not accept anyone. After a while, Dao Master Dan Yun opened his mouth and said, "Of course, if there is someone who is talented, even if he can't become my disciple, I will accept him into the Heavenly Elixir Valley. All right, let's cut the crap and get started. Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 124. Hill Cloud, Tao Master, signaled the start of the assessment. Anyone who wanted to become his disciple could participate as long as they were under the age of 25. The assessment process was very simple and was divided into 3 parts. The first test was one's ability to control fire. As an alchemist, the ability to control fire was very important. The second test was one's soul force. The third test was one's ability to refine pills. Of course, the pills tested were the most basic. The pill recipes and materials were all provided by Pill Cloud Tao Master. Following Pill Cloud Tao Master's voice, the young talents came to the center of the main square. The Yao family had already prepared alchemical furnaces for this assessment. Every time there were 100 people in the assessment, because of the large number of people, there were naturally several rounds of assessment. In the first round, Yao Chongqing did not go on stage, so he did not make trouble for Xiao Chun. Sitting on the high platform, Xiao Chun saw everyone in the center of the square releasing their spiritual power, forming a spiritual fire. This spiritual fire was an indispensable ingredient in alchemy. Spiritual fire was a flame formed by burning spiritual power. It was reasonable to say that any martial artist had a spiritual fire, but having it was one thing, and being able to control it was another. One must know that the control of spiritual fire was directly related to the success or failure of alchemy. Not only did one need to be able to control the size of the fire, but one also needed to be able to freely release it. Even those advanced alchemists needed to be able to refine the fire into threads. Therefore, the control of spiritual fire was the foundation of alchemy. One by one, the young geniuses displayed their spirit fire according to Tao Master Danyan's request. Balls of spirit fire appeared in everyone's hands. However, Tao Master Danyan didn't care at all. He drank the wine in his gourd while lazily leaning on his chair as if he didn't care about them at all. The entire assessment process was presided over by the Yao family old ancestor. After the first round of spiritual fire assessment ended, Pill Cloud Tao Master did not say a word. No one knew what Pill Cloud Tao Master meant. Everyone was somewhat nervous as they began the second part of the assessment. The second part tested soul force. This soul force assessment was relatively simple. Everyone came to the Yao family old ancestor's side and reached out to touch the soul stone. The soul stone would bloom according to the intensity of each person's soul force. Under normal circumstances, as one's cultivation level increased, the strength of one's soul would also increase. However, due to the age restriction this time around, almost all of the participants were at the mysterious Yuan stage. Most mysterious Yuan stage practitioners only had a soul strength of around 10 feet. Very few of them were able to reach 20 feet. As for 30 feet, there was less than 1 in 10,000. Moreover, at the level of the mysterious Ian realm, it was impossible for anyone to cultivate a cultivation technique that could strengthen their soul force because at this stage, a martial artist's soul was still very weak. It was completely impossible to use external forces to strengthen it. Only after surpassing the heaven realm could one cultivate a cultivation technique that could strengthen one's soul force. Therefore, the strength of everyone's soul force was completely innate, and it also happened to represent whether or not everyone had the talent to become an alchemist. The stronger one's innate soul force was, the higher one's innate talent would be. In the future, it would be easier for one to become a profound alchemist. This was something that everyone knew. Everyone began to take the test one after another. However, after a total of 100 people had passed, the person with the best result only had a soul strength of 2 inches. After 2 rounds of examination, the third round of examination had not yet begun. The drunk Tao Master Danyan opened his mouth and said, "All right, no need. Let's move on to the next batch." He indicated that there was no need to start the third round of examination. It was obvious that no one in this batch could enter the eyes of Tao Master Danyan, so there was no need to proceed with the third round of examination. Hearing Tao Master Danyan's words, the Yao family old ancestor naturally obeyed and directly replaced the second batch of disciples. Yao Chongqing was still not among them. Just like the first batch, The second batch of disciples only went through the first 2 rounds of examination before being stopped by Dao Master Danyan and did not start the 3rd round. Then the 3rd batch, the 4th batch, the results were the same. In the end, it was already the 5th batch of disciples, which was also the last batch. The number of people was less than 100, and this time, Yao Chongqing was among them. He was the last to participate in the examination. Slowly walking to the center of the square, Yao Chongqing looked at Xiao Chun with a sneer. He was sneering in his heart, but on the surface he said with a calm face, "Xiao Chun, I don't accept yesterday's matter. Today I want to challenge you. Do you dare to compete with me in alchemy?" Yao Chongqing wanted to compete with Xiao Chun in alchemy. As soon as these words came out, everyone present was stunned, but then they revealed a look of disdain. This Yao Chongqing was simply a little shameless. He was born in the Yao family and had been in contact with alchemy since he was young. But Xiao Chun, who was focused on martial arts, had probably never been in contact with alchemy. What was the point of such a competition? Upon hearing Yao Chongqing's words, Xiao Chun sneered and said, "Yao Chongqing, you're really shameless, aren't you?" He had never been in contact with alchemy, and Yao Chongqing actually wanted to compete with him in alchemy? This was simply ridiculous. Yao Chongqing did not hide the disdain in his heart. In this regard, Yao Chongqing's face was a little ugly, but in order to take revenge for yesterday's incident, Yao Chongqing could not care less. He immediately braced himself and replied, "Xiao Chun, don't talk nonsense. Just say whether you dare to accept the challenge or not. Or is it that you, the proud king of the Sky Sword Peak, don't even have the courage to fight?" "That's right, Xiao Chun. If you don't dare to accept the challenge, then get lost. As a heaven's pride, you don't even have the courage to fight. It's simply shameful." As soon as Yao Chongqing's voice fell, Mu Feng also spoke out. In the end, Yao Chongqing also took out 2 divine origin pills. He was willing to use these 2 pills as a bet to compete with Xiao Chun in alchemy. As long as Xiao Chun won, these 2 divine origin pills would belong to Xiao Chun. Seeing the divine origin pills, Xiao Chun's heart skipped a beat. Just like the 100-age pill he had bought yesterday, the divine origin pill was also a kind of pill that could increase one's lifespan. However, compared to the 100-age pill, the divine origin pill was more than 1 grade stronger. This divine origin pill was a genuine heaven-grade pill. Yesterday, when he learned that Xiao Chun had bid for 200-age pills, Yao Chongqing knew that Xiao Chun was in need of pills that could increase one's lifespan. Therefore, before this, he deliberately borrowed these 2 divine origin pills from his father as a bet to lure Xiao Chun to accept the challenge. Of course, Yao Chongqing never thought that he would give these 2 divine origin pills to Xiao Chun, because Yao Chongqing never thought that he would lose. Not to mention other things. But in terms of alchemy, how could Yao Chongqing lose to someone who had never touched alchemy before? Seeing that Yao Chongqing had actually taken out 2 divine origin pills, Xiao Chun, who originally intended to ignore the 2, slowly stood up and said in a dull tone, "Since it's a bet, how do we determine the winner and loser?" After all, although the divine origin pill was only a heaven-grade pill, it was basically priceless. Even the Yao family, these 2 divine origin pills were absolute treasures. Even the Yao family old ancestor was reluctant to use them. Therefore, Xiao Chen's heart was moved. However, before that, he naturally had to ask about the winner and loser. It was impossible to let the Yao family act as the referee. Chapter 125. Although he had never been in contact with alchemy, the 2 divine origin pills that Yao Chongqing took out were too attractive. Although the divine origin pill was only a heaven-level pill, its main ingredient, the ivy vine, was almost extinct in the heavenly Chun continent. Therefore, the divine origin pill could be said to be extinct in the heavenly Chun continent. No one could refine it. His eyes were somewhat fiery as he looked at the 2 divine origin pills in Yao Chongqing's hand. If he could get these 2 divine origin pills, his parents could at least increase their lifespan by 100 years. Seeing that Xiao Chun was about to make a move, Yao Chongqing's face immediately showed a sneer. He was secretly happy, but on the surface, he still said calmly, "How about we let Tao Master judge the outcome?" Knowing that Xiao Chun would not let the Yao family people be the judge, Yao Chongqing proposed to let Tao Master Danyan make the decision. Hearing Yao Chongqing's words, Xiao Chun and the Yao family old ancestor looked at Tao Master Danyan. Facing everyone's gaze, Tao Master Danyan burped and said indifferently, "As you wish." Obviously, he was not very interested, but he still agreed. Hearing Tao Master Danyan's words, Xiao Chun nodded slightly and agreed to Yao Chongqing's bet. Seeing Xiao Chun nod, Song Long said anxiously, "Xiao Chun, don't mess around. You have never been in contact with alchemy. How can you be Yao Chongqing's opponent?" Yao Chongqing was the Yao family's legitimate son and the Yao family's only heaven's pride. He had been in contact with alchemy since young and was personally taught by the Yao family old ancestor. Although his alchemy skills were not the best among the younger generation, they were definitely superior. Xiao Chun had never been in contact with alchemy. If he competed with Yao Chongqing in alchemy, wouldn't it be obvious that he would lose? Song Long tried to persuade Xiao Chun not to be impulsive. In this regard, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Second Uncle Master, don't worry. Even if I lose, there's no harm to me." Xiao Chun naturally knew that his chances of winning in alchemy were slim. The reason why he agreed to Yao Chongqing's request was that he didn't need to pay any price at all in this gambling battle. On the contrary, as long as he was lucky enough to win, he would be able to get 2 divine yuan pills. Only a fool would refuse such an offer. As for the problem of face, Xiao Chun did not even consider it. Moreover, even if he lost, would he really lose face? Obviously, he wouldn't. Everyone knew that he had never come into contact with alchemy, so it was normal for him to lose. On the contrary, Yao Chongqing's approach had already caused many people present to despise him. Therefore, winning or losing this battle wouldn't harm Xiao Chun in the slightest. So why wouldn't he agree? Of course, Xiao Chun wasn't completely unprepared. There were a total of 3 rounds of assessment. If he wanted to win, Xiao Chun could only do his best to win the first round of spiritual fire assessment and the second round of spiritual force assessment. As for the third round of alchemy assessment, Xiao Chun didn't have any hope at all because he simply didn't know how to do it. There was nothing to prepare for the spiritual force assessment. This was a matter of talent. As for the spiritual fire assessment, Xiao Chun could only do his best. Having already made a decision in his heart, Xiao Chun jumped and landed directly in the center of the main square. Seeing this, Yao Chongqing glanced at Xiao Chun contemptuously with a sneer on his face. In his heart, he secretly thought, "Xiao Chun, today I will make you lose face." Xiao Chun accepted the challenge, and then the Yao family old ancestor loudly announced the start of the spiritual fire assessment. Suddenly, everyone displayed their spiritual fire. The most eye-catching one was naturally Yao Chongqing. A fist-sized spiritual fire emerged in Yao Chongqing's hand, and under his control, the spiritual fire seemed to have its own spirituality and had a myriad of changes. As expected of a Yao family's genius, Yao Chongqing's control of the spiritual fire is extremely profound. Looking at the spiritual fire in Yao Chongqing's hand, many of the experts of the older generation couldn't help but praise. Indeed, Yao Chongqing's control of the spiritual fire was completely comparable to many of the older generation of alchemy masters. Everyone secretly praised, but at this moment, the spiritual fire in Yao Chongqing's hand slowly split into strands of flame that were only as thick as a strand of hair. This, refining fire into silk. To be able to refine fire into silk at such a young age, refining fire into silk. Yao Chongqing displayed refining fire into silk. For a moment, everyone present exclaimed one after another. Even Tao Master Danyan couldn't help but take a second look at him. To be able to refine fire into silk at such a young age, one had to admit that Yao Chongqing's talent in alchemy was very good. Even in the celestial Dan Valley, he could be considered a genius. Among the hundreds of examinees, Yao Chongqing was the only one who could refine fire into silk. Feeling the exclamations and envy of the surrounding people, Yao Changqing looked at Xiao Chun with disdain. At the same time, Xiao Chun was still trying to figure out how to ignite his spiritual power into spiritual fire. Xiao Chun had never come into contact with any alchemy, so until now, he had no way to manifest the spiritual fire. Looking at Xiao Chen's incomparably jerky movements, everyone secretly sighed. No one would look down on Xiao Chun. After all, this was Xiao Chen's first time coming into contact with alchemy, so his performance was understandable. Basically, it was already determined that Xiao Chun would lose this battle. Yao Changqing's performance was worthy of his title as a genius. In alchemy, Yao Changqing really crushed Xiao Chun. However, the crowd did not know that after dozens of attempts, Xiao Chun had gradually mastered some of the tricks. He was fully focused and gathered his spiritual power in the center of his palm. He controlled the spiritual power with his mind and began to burn it. Soon, an extremely weak white flame appeared in the center of Xiao Chen's palm. He actually manifested the spiritual fire in such a short time. Looking at the small white flame in Xiao Chen's hand, the crowd, who had been shaking their heads and sighing, was surprised at this time. A person who had never come into contact with alchemy actually manifested the spiritual fire in just over 100 breaths. So, Xiao Chen's talent in alchemy was not weak? Otherwise, it would be impossible to do this. Xiao Chen's performance was somewhat out of everyone's expectations, but compared to Yao Changqing, it was still far from enough. He was still going to lose. Everyone shook their heads. But at this moment, Dao Master Dan Yun on the high platform inadvertently glanced at the white spiritual fire in Xiao Chen's hand. It was very weak, and Xiao Chun obviously hadn't mastered how to control the spiritual fire. But it was this inadvertent glance that made Dao Master Dan Yun's indifferent expression disappear in an instant. His face immediately revealed a touch of excitement. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Xiao Chun. He said with a look of disbelief, "Heavenly fire, you actually have the heavenly fire." Staring at the white flame in Xiao Chen's hand, Dao Master Dan Yun said somewhat excitedly. After being startled, the spiritual fire in Xiao Chen's hand was extinguished instantly. Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. Chapter 126. Dao Master Dan Yun, who had been calm and composed, suddenly became so excited that no one could react. What was going on? Dao Master Dan Yun didn't change his expression when Yao Changqing refined the fire into threads. What was going on now? Heavenly fire. Dao Master Dan Yun just mentioned heavenly fire. Someone vaguely heard Dao Master Dan Yun mention heavenly fire and asked doubtfully, "I think I heard it too, but it's impossible, right?" Everyone whispered. They all knew what heavenly fire represented. The spiritual fire used by alchemists was naturally divided into different grades. From low to high, it was divided into spiritual fire, earthly fire, and heavenly fire. The spiritual fire was naturally the most common type of flame. Any martial artist could possess it. As for the earth fire, it was a flame that some powerful alchemists, through their hard work, constantly tempered their own spiritual fire. It was a flame that carried a special attribute and was called the earth fire. Compared to spiritual fire, earthly fire was definitely much stronger. However, even though earthly fire was strong, it couldn't be compared to heavenly fire. Heavenly fire was a gift from the heavens. It was innate and couldn't be formed. Just like some special physiques, heavenly fire was naturally formed. Some people with outstanding talent were born with heavenly fire. After burning their spiritual power, they would have a special attribute. This was something that could not be achieved later in life. Therefore, heavenly fire was much stronger than earthly fire. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that people who had heavenly fire were born alchemists. With heavenly fire, they had an advantage in alchemy that ordinary people couldn't compare with. This advantage was a gift from the heavens. Of course, heavenly fire was extremely rare. In the entire heavenly Chun continent, the number of people who were known to have heavenly fire was less than 5. He was the only one who had heavenly fire. Other than him, Dao Master Dan Yun only had earthly fire. It was because of this that Dao Master Danyan was so excited after seeing Xiao Chun actually had heavenly fire. Dao Master Danyan's eyes were filled with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. Looking at Xiao Chun, Dao Master Danyan said eagerly, "Show me the spiritual fire again." Dao Master Danyan was still a little uncertain. After all, heavenly flames were simply too rare. Therefore, he wanted to confirm it once more. Hearing Dao Master Danyan's words, Xiao Chun naturally didn't know anything about the heaven fire. He nodded and showed his spiritual fire again. It was a white flame. Moreover, it did not give off a scorching feeling like ordinary flames. On the contrary, one could feel a sharp sword chi from the white flame. The flame actually gave off a sharp feeling. It was obvious that only heavenly fire and earthly fire could achieve this. However, Xiao Chun had never come into contact with the Tao of alchemy, so it naturally couldn't be earthly fire. It was indeed the heavenly flame. However, even Xiao Chun did not know that the heavenly flame he possessed was actually related to the heavenly law sword embryo. Dao Master Danyan stared at the white flame in Xiao Chun's hand. After a long while, he said softly, "Heavenly flame, it really is the heavenly flame." It had been confirmed that Xiao Chun possessed the heavenly fire. Hearing this, everyone around was stunned, and Yao Changqing's face was extremely gloomy. He could refine the flame into a thread, but compared to Xiao Chen's heavenly flame, it was nothing. This was a difference in nature that couldn't be made up with. With hard work, Xiao Chun could also refine the flame into a thread and possess the heavenly flame. Xiao Chun could easily become an alchemist because refining pills with the heavenly flame was too easy. There was almost no possibility of the furnace exploding. This was the terror of the heavenly flame. Yao Changqing did not expect that Xiao Chun actually possessed the heavenly flame. He gritted his teeth as if they were about to break. Yao Changqing stared coldly at Xiao Chun. The development of the matter had completely exceeded his expectations. Based on the heavenly flame alone, Xiao Chun had surpassed him by hundreds of streets. Now, the way Dao Master Danyan looked at Xiao Chun had completely changed. Looking at Xiao Chun, Dao Master Danyan said excitedly, "What's your name?" "Junior is Xiao Chun. I'm willing to accept you as my disciple." Dao Master Danyan had already decided to accept Xiao Chun as his disciple. There was no other way. There were very few people who possessed the heavenly flame. It was already a blessing from the heavens to meet one. There was no need for any other assessment. The heavenly flame had already explained everything. With the heavenly flame, Xiao Chen's future achievements in alchemy would not be weaker than his own. Dao Master Danyan was very clear about this point. Hearing that Dao Master Danyan was ready to accept Xiao Chun as his disciple, Yao Changqing felt as if he had eaten a fly. But what made him even more uncomfortable was that Xiao Chun actually refused Dao Master Danyan's offer. Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Senior Dao Master, can you let this junior and Yao Changqing finish the competition first?" To be honest, Xiao Chun was actually not very interested in alchemy. Yes, alchemists did have a terrifying network and were also extremely respected. However, under normal circumstances, many alchemists' fighting strength was not strong. They could only be regarded as ordinary among their peers. This was because they spent more time on alchemy. As a result, their cultivation of martial arts was naturally inferior to others. In Xiao Chen's mind, the so-called network and respect were empty. One's own strength was the most important thing. Xiao Chen's goal was to reach the peak of martial arts, not the so-called alchemy. Of course, this did not mean that alchemy was not good. It was just that Xiao Chun did not have much interest in alchemy. Seeing that Xiao Chun did not seem to be interested in alchemy, Dao Master Danyan was not angry. Instead, he revealed a happy smile and said, "Well, you two compete first. We'll talk after the competition." His attitude towards Xiao Chun had changed 180 degrees. It was not difficult to see how important the heavenly flame was to Dao Master Danyan. After saying that, Dao Master Danyan returned to the high platform. His eyes were still flashing with excitement, but he did not say anything more. Instead, he quietly waited for the competition between Xiao Chun and Yao Changqing. Originally, he wanted to make Xiao Chun lose face, but who knew that not only did he not succeed, but he also went for wool and came back shorn. Once again, Xiao Chen's reputation soared. Damn it, Dao Master Dan Yun cursed in his heart. At the same time, in the first round of the spiritual flame assessment, Xiao Chun had undoubtedly won. Even if Yao Changqing could refine fire into threads, he was only an ordinary spiritual flame. On the other hand, Xiao Chun had the heavenly flame. The gap between the two of them was not comparable at all. Yao Changqing lost in the first round. Next was the second round of the soul power assessment. For some reason, Yao Changqing was faintly worried. His original absolute confidence had collapsed a lot. He felt somewhat uneasy in his heart. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 127. Yao Changqing originally thought that victory was in the bag, but who would have thought that Xiao Chun actually possessed the heaven flame? This made Yao Changqing's heart instantly lose confidence. He had already lost this round, and the second round of the Soul Force test was also a test of talent. If he lost again, then even if Yao Changqing won the third round, it would be useless. Perhaps even Yao Changqing did not realize that at this moment, he had already consciously believed that his talent was not as good as Xiao Chen's. Therefore, he was so worried about the second round of the Soul Force test. His face was full of worry, but the matter had already reached this point. Naturally, there was no chance for regret. Under the Yao family ancestors' supervision, the second round of the Soul Force test began. Very tacitly, Xiao Chun and Yao Changqing both chose to be the last to go on stage. One by one, the young talents finished the test. The highest one had a soul force of 4 inches. Finally, only Xiao Chun and Yao Changqing were left. Yao Changqing coldly glanced at Xiao Chun, and with some apprehension, he stepped in front of the Yao family ancestor. He gently placed his hand on the soul testing stone. In an instant, the soul testing stone emitted a white light. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. Soon, the soul testing stone's light grew to 5 inches and finally stopped at 6 inches. With a soul force of 6 inches, Yao Changqing was the person with the best results so far. Originally, he should have been extremely happy, but for some reason, Yao Changqing was not happy. This was because there was still Xiao Chun who had not yet been tested. After experiencing the heaven flame, Yao Changqing's heart was no longer calm. Facing Xiao Chun, he could no longer be as indifferent as before. Releasing the soul testing stone, Yao Changqing looked at Xiao Chun with a complicated expression. At the same time, Xiao Chun indifferently brushed past Yao Changqing and arrived in front of the soul testing stone. Reaching out his hand, he gently grasped the soul testing stone, and the same white light shined. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. In just a few breaths, Xiao Chen's soul force reached the same level as Yao Changqing's, 6 inches. At the moment when the white light reached 6 inches, Yao Changqing's heart constantly prayed, "Stop, stop, stop." The strength of Xiao Chen's soul power had already reached the same level as his. Yao Changqing was screaming in his heart for Xiao Chen to stop, but his prayers and shouts obviously did not have any effect. The white light, that was originally only 6 inches long, quickly expanded to 7 inches long. Seeing this scene, Yao Changqing's face completely paled. He lost again. In the first round of the spiritual fire test, he lost the second round of the soul test. Even if he could defeat Xiao Chun in the third round of alchemy test, he would still lose. He never thought that he would lose to Xiao Chun, a person who had never come into contact with alchemy, even though he had been learning alchemy from the Grand Elder since he was a child. Yao Changqing looked like a deflated balloon. However, at that moment, no one noticed the change in Yao Changqing, as everyone's eyes were on Xiao Chun. Someone exclaimed in surprise, "It's still growing. It's going to break through 8 inches." Xiao Chen's soul force did not stop growing after reaching 7 inches. Soon, it reached 8 inches. 8 inches of soul force was extremely rare in the heavenly Chun continent. Even in the entire Heavenly Dan Valley, there were only a few people who could reach this step. Everyone was shocked. However, just when everyone thought that Xiao Chen's limit was 8 inches, the white light continued to grow. It was still growing, which meant that Xiao Chen's soul force was not just 8 inches. Thinking that Xiao Chen's soul force could reach 9 inches, everyone present could not remain calm. 9 inches, this could be said to be the limit of the soul testing stone. Moreover, anyone who had not cultivated their soul force could only reach 9 inches at most. In other words, 9 inches of soul force was the limit of one's innate soul force. Therefore, it was called the limit of soul force by the common people. In the end, Xiao Chen's soul power had indeed increased to 9 inches, and that was the limit of his soul power. Heavenly Flame, limit of soul force. This guy is simply a natural alchemist. Someone could not help but exclaim. That's not all. Xiao Chun could be considered a genius, even if he's a weapon refiner or a talisman master with his soul power, another person said. Needless to say, the heavenly fire was a gift from the heavens for alchemists, and the benefits brought about by the extreme soul strength were not limited to alchemists. It should be known that the requirements of soul strength for craftsmen and talisman masters were also extremely high. Therefore, Xiao Chun, who possessed the extreme soul strength, could already be considered a genius even among craftsmen and talisman masters. No one had expected such a result. Originally, everyone thought that Xiao Chun, who had never touched the Tao of Elixir, would lose in this battle. However, Xiao Chun relied on his own talent to completely crush Yao Chongqing in the first 2 rounds of assessment. He had already won 2 rounds in a row. Therefore, even if Xiao Chun did not know alchemy and chose to forfeit in the 3rd round, Yao Chongqing would still lose. His martial talent was heaven-defying, he had heavenly flame, and he also had the limit of soul force. Today, Xiao Chun had really opened everyone's eyes. A person's talent could be so strong. Was this the difference between a king of geniuses and an ordinary heaven's pride? Everyone thought in their hearts. Their eyes were filled with worship, especially those of the younger generation. As people of the same generation, Xiao Chun was enough for them to look up to. For a moment, it was unknown who spoke first. Mother of Asterisker, who was the one who kicked Xiao Chun out of the top 10 king of geniuses. With such talent and combat strength, if Xiao Chun is not one of the top 10 king of geniuses, then who is? That's right. Don't worry. With Xiao Chen's performance today, once news of it spreads, he will naturally return to the top 10 king of geniuses. Everyone was discussing spiritedly, but Xiao Chun did not care. He slowly walked towards Yao Chongqing and smiled. Are we still competing in the 3rd round? I don't know alchemy. If you want to compete, then I will forfeit. Xiao Chen's words were very calm, and he did not hide anything. He directly said that he did not know alchemy, and if Yao Chongqing wanted to compete, then he would forfeit. His words were very calm, but they were very harsh to Yao Chongqing's ears. It was as if Xiao Chun was showing off. I don't know alchemy, but I can still beat you. As if he had been humiliated, Yao Chongqing's face turned red. He did not know how to describe the look in his eyes. This time, not only did he not hurt Xiao Chun, but he had also become Xiao Chen's stepping stone, making him even more famous. Moreover, he had lost 2 divine origin pills. This was really a double loss. He really wanted to deny it, but with so many people present, Yao Chongqing could not do that no matter how shameless he was. Moreover, at this time, the calm Yao family ancestor suddenly said, Chongqing, if you agree to the bet, you must accept your loss. Give the divine origin pills to little friend Xiao Chun. Chapter 128. The Yao family old ancestor said, although the divine origin Dan was very precious, and there were not enough materials to refine the divine origin Dan, the Yao family old ancestor was very clear about which was more important than the face of the Yao family. There were so many people here, including the 7 overlord forces and Tao Master Danyan. If the Yao family acted shamelessly, there was no doubt that the Yao family would lose face. Moreover, Dao Master Danyan was fond of Xiao Chun. If he held a grudge against the Yao family, it would not be worth it. Therefore, the 2 divine origin pills could not be denied. Hearing the old ancestor's words, Yao Chongqing's face turned gloomy, but he still handed the divine origin pills to Xiao Chun. He also knew that if he acted shamelessly, there would be consequences for the Yao family. Therefore, Yao Chongqing had no room to act shamelessly. After receiving the divine origin pills from Yao Chongqing, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "Thank you." Then, he returned to the high platform. All the tests had ended. Although Dao Master Danyan did not say who he would accept as his disciple until the last moment, everyone knew that Dao Master Danyan must have made a decision in his heart. With the heavenly fire and ultimate soul force, where could Dao Master Danyan find a genius like Xiao Chun? Even if he found one, he would have already found a master. Therefore, when the test ended, Dao Master Danyan directly left with the Sky Sword Peak people. Needless to say, it was obviously for Xiao Chun. Looking at Dao Master Danyan leaving with the Sky Sword Peak people, everyone was envious. Of course, all of this was what Xiao Chun deserved. Without the corresponding talent, how could Dao Master Danyan pay attention to him? All the way back to their residence, Song Long's attitude towards Dao Master Danyan was extremely respectful. No matter if it was strength or status, Dao Master Danyan was far superior to Song Long. Dao Master Danyan asked him to sit down in the living room. However, Dao Master Danyan was obviously not interested in Song Long. His only purpose was very clear and very obvious. It was just for Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun's talent had caught Dao Master Danyan's attention. Needless to say, his sky, fire, and extreme soul force were beyond his expectation. Naturally, Dao Master Danyan would pay more attention to a genius who had both sky, fire, and extreme soul force. Such a genius was rare. Now that he had encountered such a genius, Dao Master Danyan would not easily give up. Sitting on the main seat with Song Long, Dao Master Danyan looked down at Xiao Chun and said with a smile, "Xiao Chun, what do you think? Take me as your teacher and I'll treat you well." At this moment, Dao Master Danyan had completely sobered up. His eyes were filled with anticipation as he looked at Xiao Chun. After searching for so long, Xiao Chun was the disciple he had been looking for. With Xiao Chun's talent, he could definitely inherit his legacy. In fact, it wasn't impossible for him to surpass him in the Tao of Alchemy in the future. Dao Master Danyan waited expectantly for Xiao Chun's answer. Hearing that, Xiao Chun said awkwardly, "Junior, thanks Senior for your kindness. However, Junior is now a disciple of Heavenly Sword Peak. If I were to join the Heavenly Dan Valley, wouldn't that?" Xiao Chun did not have much interest in the Tao of Alchemy. Additionally, he did not want to divide his attention too much for the time being. Doing so would definitely affect his cultivation of the Tao of martial arts. Using Nine Firmaments Palace as an excuse, Dao Master Danyan said nonchalantly, "That's fine. Taking me as your teacher will not mean joining the Heavenly Dan Valley. It has nothing to do with the Heavenly Dan Valley. You're just my disciple. As for Nine Firmaments Palace, you can rest assured. Situations like this are not rare in the Central Divine region. Thus, Nine Firmaments Palace will not say anything." Dao Master Danyan's words were not false. However, Xiao Chun still revealed a troubled look. Looking at the expectant Dao Master Danyan, Xiao Chun sighed helplessly. In the end, he decided to tell the truth. "Senior, Junior will be frank with you. Truth be told, Junior has no interest in the Tao of Alchemy. Junior's ambition lies in the Tao of martial arts. Thus, Junior only wishes to focus on cultivation. I do not wish to delay my cultivation of the Tao of martial arts because of other matters." Dao Master Danyan was taken aback when he heard Xiao Chun's words. However, he quickly became so angry that he stamped his feet. "You fool!" He directly scolded Xiao Chun for his ignorance. Seeing Dao Master Danyan become angry, Song Long, who was beside him, quickly spoke up to console him. He was indeed afraid that Dao Master Danyan would vent his anger on Xiao Chun. However, in the face of Song Long's words, Dao Master Danyan waved his hand, indicating for Song Long and the others to leave. He had something to say to Xiao Chun alone. Regarding Xiao Qin's refusal, Tao Master Danyan was furious. In Xiao Qin's heart, the Tao of alchemy had actually become a stumbling block to the Tao of martial arts. After everyone left, only Xiao Qin and Tao Master Danyan were left in the living room. Tao Master Danyan stood up and walked toward Xiao Qin. Then, with a straight face, Tao Master Danyan said, "Boy, do you know what the Tao of martial arts is?" The Tao of martial arts includes thousands of things. The Tao of sword, Tao of saber, Tao of spear, Tao of fist, Tao of alchemy, Tao of talisman, Tao of weapon refining. These are all part of the Tao of martial arts, Tao Master Danyan said with a straight face. According to him, the Tao of alchemy would not hinder Xiao Qin's Tao of martial arts. On the contrary, it would be of great help to him. First of all, once Xiao Qin became an alchemist, it would mean that Xiao Qin would have an additional means. This was obviously beneficial without any harm. Moreover, the world thought that the alchemist's battle strength was pitifully low among the same level. However, they did not know that this was just a rumor spread by some ignorant people. Once the spiritual fire of an alchemist transformed into the earth fire, it would not only be used for alchemy, but also for fighting against enemies. The earth fire had such great power, not to mention the heaven fire. In addition, alchemists paid attention to the cultivation of soul force. The strength of soul force would not only improve the comprehension ability of martial artists, but also enhance their perception ability. In addition, there were many benefits to having a strong soul force. Tao Master Danyan told Xiao Qin all the benefits of becoming an alchemist and taught Xiao Qin everything about the Tao of martial arts. As a super expert of the Tao Master realm, Tao Master Danyan's understanding of the Tao of martial arts was naturally incomparable to that of Xiao Qin. Even Song Long and the others were far inferior to Tao Master Danyan. After listening to Tao Master Danyan's words, Xiao Qin was suddenly enlightened. Although Xiao Qin's talent was outstanding, his understanding of the Tao of martial arts was still very one-sided. Today, Tao Master Danyan's words benefited Xiao Qin a lot. At the same time, he also found that his understanding of the Tao of martial arts was indeed too narrow. At the same time, he also had some prejudice against the Tao of elixir. Clearly aware of his mistakes, Xiao Qin did not resist the Tao of elixir. Because as Tao Master Danyan said, practicing both Tao of elixir and Tao of martial arts would not only bring no harm to Xiao Qin, but also many benefits. After correcting his wrong views, Xiao Qin still had some difficulties in making a decision. However, to Xiao Qin's surprise, Tao Master Danyan did not wait for Xiao Qin's reply. Instead, Tao Master Danyan directly said, "Well, I've said what I should say. You've listened to my teachings, so you're my disciple. Today, you have to worship me as your master whether you want to or not. Please collect, recommend, reward." Chapter 129. Tao Master Danyan didn't give Xiao Qin any chance to refute. He didn't care whether Xiao Qin agreed or not. He pointed his finger and a white light flashed. Suddenly, a lot of knowledge about alchemy appeared in Xiao Qin's mind. Obviously, Tao Master Danyan was imparting the knowledge of alchemy to Xiao Qin. There were a lot of memories, but all of them were the most basic, including the introduction of heaven and earth treasures and the most basic alchemy techniques. Taking back his finger, Tao Master Danyan returned to his previous drunken appearance. His body was a little shaky as he said, "Remember these. Just like martial arts, if you want to be a qualified alchemist, the foundation is very important." He imparted the most basic knowledge to Xiao Qin. Actually, there was not much to teach about learning these things. All he had to do was memorize them. He had to firmly remember these basic knowledge before he could officially embark on the path of alchemy. Xiao Qin inexplicably became Tao Master Danyan's disciple, and Tao Master Danyan didn't seem to care about the apprenticeship ceremony. In his opinion, Xiao Qin was now his disciple. Helplessly, Xiao Qin simply sorted out the basic knowledge. He also found that the path of alchemy was really extraordinary. He really underestimated alchemists before. To become a qualified alchemist, one must not only be familiar with all kinds of heaven and earth treasures, but also be clear about the use and medicinal properties of all kinds of heaven and earth treasures. At the same time, the practice of spiritual fire must be extremely systematic and professional. Of course, this was also because of the existence of Tao Master Danyan. He was an existence that surpassed the existence of heaven-level alchemists. Only he could have such a profound understanding. Therefore, according to the knowledge he imparted, Xiao Chun should be able to grasp these basic knowledge very quickly. After accepting the inheritance of Tao Master Danyan, his view of alchemy had completely changed. After a little hesitation, Xiao Chun finally bowed to Tao Master Danyan and said, "Disciple pays his respects to Master." Hearing Xiao Chun call him Master, Tao Master Danyan was in a good mood. He laughed loudly and said, "Good, good. During this period of time, you should familiarize yourself with this knowledge. The next time we meet, I will teach you how to refine elixirs. Of course, the premise is that you must thoroughly master the way to control the spiritual fire before that." After saying that, Tao Master Core, clouds disappeared, leaving only his voice behind. Master still has some matters to attend to. You should return to Nine Firmaments Palace first. Once Master is done, I will go find you. Remember, while the Tao of martial arts is important, alchemy must not be neglected. Tao Master Danyan left. He didn't hold the apprenticeship ceremony and left in a carefree manner. Hearing Tao Master Danyan's words, Xiao Chun smiled helplessly. Tao Master Danyan really did do as he pleased. However, since he was a super expert of the Tao Master realm, Tao Master Danyan was indeed qualified to do so. The world is vast. Where can I not go? I can do whatever I want. This is the freedom of the strong. Of course, without strength, you would not be able to do so. After successfully becoming Tao Master Danyan's apprentice, Xiao Chun told Song Long about it. As for the others, they were unaware. Neither Xiao Chun nor Tao Master Danyan cared about it. He had never thought that he would embark on the path of alchemy. Of course, Xiao Chun was very clear about this. For him, the Tao of martial arts was the most important. The path of alchemy was just a supporting one. Song Long was very happy that Xiao Chun had been accepted as a disciple by Tao Master Danyan. Moreover, he was his last disciple. Who was Tao Master Danyan, after all? He was one of the strongest existences under the Seven Sovereigns. Thus, Song Long did not have the slightest objection to Xiao Chun becoming his disciple. He believed that Song Xian would also support it. After staying in the city of the King of Medicine for a day, Xiao Chun followed Song Long and the others back to Nine Cloud Palace. Riding on the golden-winged Great Pung Eagle, it would take 5 days to reach Nine Cloud Palace. Just as Xiao Chun and the others were leaving the city of the King of Medicine, in a small town near the heavenly Dan Valley, Tao Master Danyan was drinking in a restaurant. He was drunk. His face was flushed and his eyes were slightly narrowed. He did not have the demeanor of a Tao Master at all. Just as Tao Master Danyan was drinking to his heart's content, a beautiful and gentle girl walked into the restaurant. The appearance of the girl caused everyone in the restaurant to unconsciously reveal a look of infatuation. However, when they saw the heavenly Dan Valley's disciple uniform, they were stunned and did not dare to do anything out of line. The disciples of the heavenly Dan Valley were existences that could not be offended in the heavenly Dan Prefecture. The girl came directly to Tao Master Danyan. Looking at the messy Tao Master Danyan, the girl said unhappily, "Why did you drink so much again? Mother is looking for you. If you don't go back quickly, you will be in trouble." The girl's name was Ouyang Roshua. She was Tao Master Danyan's daughter and also the pride of the heavenly Dan Valley. Hearing Ouyang Roshua's words, a smile appeared on Tao Master Danyan's drunken face. He hugged Ouyang Roshua and rubbed his stubbled chin on her delicate face. He laughed loudly and said, "Ha, my good daughter." It was obvious that Tao Master Danyan doted on Ouyang Roshua. Ouyang Roshua, whose face was stung by her father's stubbled beard, was unhappy. She pouted her lips and said, "Ha, you have a bright future ahead of you." Seeing Ouyang Roshua's expression, Tao Master Danyan laughed heartily and said, "Ha, my dear daughter, your father has finally met a genius this time. His talent is not any weaker than yours. I have already accepted him as my disciple and will leave for a period of time. Moreover, I have seen that you two are very compatible with each other. You are much better than those little guys who are pursuing you. When you two get familiar with each other, I will betroth you to him. Master Danyan was very satisfied with Xiao Chun. He even had the thought of betrothing his daughter to Xiao Chun. However, Ouyang Roshue was unhappy when she heard this. Although she looked weak, she was the kind of person who was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. If she did not like something, she would not yield even if you beat her to death. Looking at her father's back, Ouyang Roshue raised her small fist angrily to express her dissatisfaction. Unfortunately, Master Danyan did not care. He returned to the heavenly Dan Valley. Soon, Master Danyan arrived at his residence. In the courtyard, he saw a beautiful woman in a white dress. She looked like a fairy who had descended from the heavens. She was sitting elegantly in the courtyard. The woman was very beautiful. If the 7 sovereigns were present, they would definitely recognize that she was the heavenly Dan ruler. As one of the 7 sovereigns, the heavenly Dan ruler was actually a woman. Moreover, she was Master Danyan's wife and Ouyang Roshue's mother. If this was known by outsiders, they would be shocked. Who would have thought that Master Danyan and the heavenly Dan ruler were husband and wife? Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 130. Only a few people in the Tianshan continent knew that Dan Yun and the Heaven Alchemy ruler were husband and wife. Dan Yun looked at the Heaven Alchemy ruler, who was sitting in the garden, and burped. Then he walked over to her and sat down next to her, smiling. "What's wrong? Why are you looking for me? Do you miss me?" joked the Heaven Alchemy ruler. When the Heaven Alchemy ruler heard that, she glanced at Dan Yun indifferently and said, "You're never serious. You don't even take care of the Dan Valley you created. You just wander around outside all day. Which man in the world would be like you? You push your wife out to take care of everything. You're a man, and you're always free and easy. Hee. Isn't it my good fortune to have found such a smart and capable wife?" Hearing the Heavenly Pill ruler's words, Master Danyan continued to laugh shamelessly. The Heaven Alchemy ruler didn't know what to say about her husband. He had always been like that. She didn't know what she had seen in him back then. He was much stronger than her in every aspect, whether it was talent, temperament, or cultivation, but he was too lazy to care about anything in the Dan Valley. He just drank all day. He sighed helplessly. A few of the higher-ups in the Heavenly Pill Valley, as well as the other 6 pill rulers, knew that the Heavenly Pill ruler and Master Danyan were husband and wife. After all, this kind of thing couldn't be hidden. However, only the wife, the Heavenly Pill ruler, knew how terrifying Master Danyan was. Even his daughter, Ouyang Roshue, didn't know how powerful her father was. In other people's eyes, Danyan was a Dao Zun cultivator, but who would have thought that his wife, the Heaven Alchemy ruler, was much weaker than him? Her husband was the most talented person she had ever seen. In the entire Tianshan continent, only the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds could compete with him. Unfortunately, they were both talented, but their personalities were completely different. The ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds had created the 9 Clouds Palace, and he was proud and heroic. On the other hand, her husband was strong, but he didn't care about anything. He was too lazy. He even asked his wife to take care of the Heavenly Pill Valley while he concealed his identity and lived a carefree life. Upon seeing the Heavenly Alchemy ruler's displeasure, Master Danyan didn't say anything. He just smiled foolishly. After a long while, when the Heavenly Alchemy ruler grew impatient, Master Danyan finally spoke. "Madam, guess what happened when I went to the city of the King of Medicine?" "You accepted a disciple. What's wrong with that?" said the Heaven Alchemy ruler. "And Roshue, if you're free, you should teach Roshue. She's your daughter." "To you," said the Heaven Alchemy ruler angrily. He was the leader of the celestial Dan Valley, so he knew what had happened in the city of the King of Medicine. Knowing that her husband had taken in a disciple, the Heavenly Pill ruler felt a little jealous. He had never even taught his own daughter before, but now he had taken in a disciple. Moreover, it was his last disciple. He was going to pass on his legacy to an outsider. As the heavenly pill ruler's mother, the heavenly pill ruler was naturally unhappy. Everyone thought that Ouyang Ro Shui's abilities were passed down to her by the pill cloud Dao sovereign. However, they did not know that it was the exact opposite. The pill cloud Dao sovereign had never taught Ouyang Ro Shui anything since she was young. Ouyang Ro Shui's abilities were all learned from her mother, who was the heaven pill sovereign. He felt helpless. They had argued before, but no matter how angry the heaven alchemy ruler was, Dan Yun had never agreed to teach his daughter. Sai, how great would it be if Ro Shui's abilities really came from you, as the outside world says? With you teaching her, her current achievements would definitely be far greater than what they are now. The heaven pill ruler sighed helplessly and said helplessly. She knew that if her father, Dan Yun, was willing to teach Ouyang Ro Shui, her achievements would be much better than now. Unfortunately, she had such a father. Hearing the heaven alchemy ruler's sigh, Dan Yun said helplessly, "Madam, I don't have a choice. Master once said that our lineage is only passed to males and not females. Ro Shui is a girl. How am I supposed to pass it on? I can't go against Master's orders. But don't worry, madam. Xiao Chun is a good kid. I'm very satisfied. Besides, I've thought about it. When this kid inherits my legacy, I'll let him marry Ro Shui. That way, we won't be a family. Don't you think so?" He already had the intention of letting Xiao Chun marry Ouyang Ro Shui. Hearing Dan Yun's words, the heaven alchemy ruler stood up and said, "I can't control you. You can do whatever you want. Don't make Ro Shui refuse to acknowledge you as her father. If that happens, it won't be my problem." After saying that, the heaven alchemy ruler turned to leave. She wasn't like Dan Yun, who had many things to deal with in the entire Dan Valley. She didn't have much time to chat with this drunkard. Looking at his wife's back, Dao Master Dan Yun smiled faintly. Then he shouted, "My wife, I will be leaving for 9 Firmament's Palace for a while. If there's anything, send someone to 9 Firmament's Palace's Heavenly Sword Peak to look for me." "Do whatever you want," the heaven alchemy ruler replied snappily. Ignoring such a big, heavenly Dan Valley and go to 9 Cloud Palace, the heaven alchemy ruler was naturally very dissatisfied. Seeing the angry heaven alchemy ruler, Dan Yun smiled and left the heavenly Dan Valley. Looking at the direction he was heading, it was likely that he was heading to 9 Cloud Palace. Unaware of Dan Yun's secret, Xiao Chun and the others rushed back to 9 Cloud Palace from the city of the Medicine King 5 days later. The Heavenly Sword Peak was naturally overjoyed at the news that Xiao Chun was still alive. Song Xian and Song Yun personally welcomed Xiao Chun and the others. Seeing that Xiao Chun was fine, Song Xian was so excited that tears flowed down his face. Xiao Chun was the hope of the Heavenly Sword Peak. Now that Xiao Chun was still alive, it proved that the Heavenly Sword Peak's hope was still there. Like Song Long, Song Xian, and Song Yun also asked Xiao Chun about what had happened in the past few months. Xiao Chun explained everything again. Of course, Xiao Chun did not say a word about what he should not say. After dealing with Song Xian and Song Yun, Xiao Chun chatted with Mo Jia, Qi Yin, Qin Heng, and the others he was familiar with. After that, Xiao Chun hurried to Qin Shuru's residence. Because everyone thought that he was dead, Qin Yao and Qin Luo naturally followed Qin Shuru. They quickly arrived at Qin Shuru's residence. Because of him, Qin Shuru's treatment was extremely good. It was not inferior to that of Qin Heng and the others. Looking at the 3 words "dustless residence" hanging above the courtyard gate, Xiao Chun smiled. Clearly, this was done by Qin Shuru. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 131. Dustless Residence. Even after coming to the Sky Sword Peak, Qin Shuru still kept the dustless residence. Xiao Chun couldn't help but smile as she gazed at the 3 words "dustless residence." A warm feeling flowed in her heart. Xiao Chun stepped into the courtyard. However, as soon as he arrived outside the main hall, he heard a man's voice coming from the main hall before he even stepped into it. Junior sister Shuei-ro, I really like you. I've already discussed it with the Peak Master. As long as you come to my prison flame peak, you will be able to enjoy the treatment of a core disciple. Staying the Sky Sword Peak won't do you any good. Junior sister, trust me, the Sky Sword Peak won't exist for long. The Peak Master has already discussed with the other Peak Masters to abolish the Sky Sword Peak. Upon hearing this voice, Xiao Chun came to a halt. Even though it was only a few short sentences, Xiao Chun still received a lot of useful information from it. She didn't know who this man was, but she guessed that he should be an annoying fly. However, the fact that the Prison Flame Peak Master was going to abolish the Sky Sword Peak piqued Xiao Chen's interest. According to him, ever since the previous Prison Flame Peak Master mysteriously disappeared, he had taken over the Prison Flame Peak and became the new Peak Master. At the same time, after the man's voice vanished, Qin Shiru's voice sounded. Qin Shiru's voice was ice cold. Unlike the gentleness he showed to Xiao Chun, he spoke coldly. Wang Qingfeng, please conduct yourself with dignity. I already have a husband. Husband? You're talking about Xiao Chun, right? I've heard of him, but he's already dead. Junior sister Shuei-ro, why are you ruining your future for a dead man? Wang Qingfeng replied to Qin Shiru's words. Qin Shiru was thoroughly enraged. If Wang Qingfeng was only pestering him, Qin Shiru could tolerate it. However, Wang Qingfeng humiliated Xiao Chun and Qin Shiru couldn't tolerate it. A trace of murderous intent surged in his eyes. His already ice-cold temperament became even colder, as though his aura alone could freeze thousands of miles. Wang Qingfeng's expression changed when he sensed the coldness emanating from Qin Shiru's body. However, just as Qin Shiru was about to make his move, Xiao Chun had already walked in. He first looked at Qin Shiru in astonishment. This girl, in just a few months, not only had her cultivation increased to the advanced mysterious Yuan stage, but the coldness emanating from her body also shocked him. It was simply too cold. Seeing that someone had suddenly barged in, Qin Shiru and Qin Shiru turned to look at Xiao Chun. When Qin Shiru saw the person who had barged in, a trace of disbelief appeared in his eyes. Then, the coldness on his body dissipated, and he rushed into Xiao Chen's arms with tears in his eyes. Qin Shiru thought that Xiao Chun was already dead. Now that he saw Xiao Chun alive and well in front of him, one could imagine how emotional Qin Shiru was. The reunion of husband and wife was supposed to be an extremely heartwarming scene. However, it was a pity that there were always some people who didn't know what was good for them and hugged Xiao Chun and Qin Shiru. Wang Qingfeng was furious. He strode over to Xiao Chun and shouted coldly, "Who are you? Let go of junior sister Shuei-ro." Qin Shiru didn't immediately recognize Xiao Chen's identity. When he heard Wang Qingfeng's words, his face darkened and he immediately wanted to deal with this bastard. The coldness that made people tremble in fear once again spread out. Fortunately, Xiao Chun gently patted her back and spoke first. "Senior sister, you don't have to worry about such a small matter. Moreover, I still have some questions to ask this person. Leave him to me." She didn't let Qin Shiru make a move. When he heard Xiao Chen's words, Qin Shiru nodded obediently. The coldness on his body quickly dissipated, and he took the initiative to retreat behind Xiao Chun. He was extremely obedient. Xiao Chun smiled and temporarily put away the joy of being reunited with Qin Shiru. She slowly took a step forward and looked at Wang Qingfeng indifferently. "Who am I? Am I not the dead man that you mentioned just now?" You're Xiao Chun. You're not dead." Wang Qingfeng naturally wasn't stupid and quickly guessed Xiao Chen's identity. Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled, but it was a very cold smile. Without saying a word, he came in front of Wang Qingfeng and threw a slap. Then, a bright red handprint appeared on Wang Qingfeng's face. However, the slap wasn't over yet. Xiao Chen kicked out again and directly sent Wang Qingfeng flying. There was no way for Wang Qingfeng to fight back. Although Wang Qingfeng's cultivation was at the perfect mysterious Yuan stage, he wasn't a heaven's pride. His combat strength was far inferior to Xiao Chen's. Therefore, Even though his cultivation was one stage higher than Xiao Chen's, Xiao Chen was still able to easily defeat him. Xiao Chen didn't even use his spiritual energy. He only used his physical strength to defeat Wang Qingfeng. After dealing with Wang Qingfeng with a slap and a kick, Xiao Chen slowly walked to the main seat and sat down. He looked down at Wang Qingfeng, whose cheeks were red and swollen, and blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Get over here." Previously, Wang Qingfeng didn't put Xiao Chen in his eyes, but now he had personally experienced Xiao Chen's terrifying strength. Xiao Chen didn't even use his spiritual energy. He only used his physical strength to defeat Wang Qingfeng. This showed how strong Xiao Chen was. Wang Qingfeng obeyed and came in front of Xiao Chen. He was completely terrified. A person like him was a weakling. Once he met someone stronger than him, he would immediately be defeated. "You said that the prison flame peak master was going to destroy the sky sword peak. Tell me, how is he going to destroy my sky sword peak? Also, which of the other peak masters are working with him?" Xiao Chen looked at Wang Qingfeng and asked indifferently. To be honest, Xiao Chen wasn't interested in Wang Qingfeng at all. If it weren't for the words that Wang Qingfeng said, Xiao Chen would have already thrown him out. After hearing Xiao Chen's question, Wang Qingfeng's expression changed instantly. In fact, he only heard about these things from hearsay. He didn't know the inside story at all, so he couldn't answer Xiao Chen's question at all. With a bitter expression, Wang Qingfeng said with a mournful face, "Senior Xiao Chen, I made all these up." You made it up? I don't think so. There's no smoke without fire. If you didn't have such thoughts, why would you say such things? But since you don't want to say it, then forget it. I don't have time to ask you." Xiao Chen chuckled. Wang Qingfeng was overjoyed. "Is Xiao Chen going to let me go?" Wang Qingfeng thought that Xiao Chen was going to let him go, but what Xiao Chen said in the next second made Wang Qingfeng completely panic. Xiao Chen said to Qing Yao and Qing Luo, who had rushed over after hearing about the situation, "Qing Luo, get an elder here. Tell him that I have something to tell him." Xiao Chen looked at Wang Qingfeng and said, "I'm not interested in testing you, but I believe that the elders of my Sky Sword Peak will be interested and have plenty of time." Chapter 132. Xiao Chen guessed that Wang Qingfeng must have heard the news because the peak leader of the prison flame peak wouldn't tell him such an important thing. Therefore, Xiao Chen didn't pay much attention to him. But just like what Xiao Chen had said, there was no smoke without fire. Since Wang Qingfeng had heard the news, it proved that it was likely to be true. After all, the peak leader of the Sky Sword Peak, Song Feng, had been forced away by the peak leader of the prison flame peak back then and had almost lost his life. Because of that, the peak leader of the prison flame peak was the one who hated the most now that the Sky Sword Peak had reappeared. Shortly after, an elder of the Sky Sword Peak hurried over after Qing Luo informed him. Xiao Chen bowed to the elder and said, "I've captured a disciple of the prison flame peak." I heard from him that. Xiao Chen explained everything to the elder. The elder's expression changed drastically. This wasn't a small matter. If that was the case, the Sky Sword Peak would be in danger. After all, the Sky Sword Peak was still too weak. They weren't a match for the prison flame peak at all. One had to know that the Sky Sword Peak didn't even have a Dao King Realm cultivator, let alone a Dao Sovereign, without sufficient strength. Even if the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds was present, it was difficult to guarantee that nothing would go wrong. Therefore, the elder's expression turned grave after hearing the news. Seeing this, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Elder, you don't have to worry too much. Even if the prison flame peak really wants to do this, they definitely won't dare to do it openly. Therefore, my Sky Sword Peak also has the ability to deal with them. The main reason I asked you to come is to let you bring this person to see Master and see how Master will deal with him. However, even if I don't get any valuable information from him, I still can't let him go easily. Don't you agree, Elder?" Xiao Chen's words seemed to be comforting, but it was also an order. The elder wasn't stupid and immediately understood what Xiao Chen meant. He glanced at Wang Qingfeng coldly. He knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of Wang Qingfeng. However, Xiao Chen's purpose was to torture him. As a result, Wang Qingfeng would probably experience a torment worse than death. The elder nodded respectfully and said, "The Peak Master and the others have been in closed-door cultivation for most of the time. How about this, young master? I will take this person away. I will not disappoint, young master." With the support of sufficient resources, Song Xian and the other two had been doing their best to break through to the Dao transformation stage during this period of time. Although it would be difficult to achieve in a short period of time, the three of them had to work hard. Therefore, the three of them rarely came out of seclusion unless something major happened. Wang Qingfeng's matter was just a small matter, and this elder was naturally competent. Hearing his words, Xiao Chen nodded in satisfaction. He thought to himself that this old man was really smart, but on the surface he still spoke with a calm expression. "Then I'll have to trouble Elder. This person coveted Shuru's beauty and tried to take advantage of her when I wasn't around. I'm very angry. I hope Elder can teach him a lesson." Although Xiao Chen didn't seem to care, Wang Qingfeng would definitely lose a layer of skin if he didn't die. The elder's face immediately sank, and a cold light flickered in his eyes as he looked at Wang Qingfeng. Then, he respectfully promised Xiao Chen, "Young master, don't worry. I guarantee that this person will never appear in front of young master again, nor will he dare to take a step into the heavenly sword peak." "Okay, then I'll have to trouble Elder." Xiao Chen smiled. Subsequently, Wang Qingfeng was taken away by the elder in extreme fear. As for what would happen to Wang Qingfeng, it was none of Xiao Chen's business. With Xiao Chen's prestige and status in the Heavenly Sword Peak, no one in the Heavenly Sword Peak would dare to disobey his orders. After settling Wang Qingfeng's matter, Xiao Chen finally had time to properly talk to Qin Shiru. After being separated for a few months, the news of Xiao Chen's death came. One could imagine how worried Qin Shiru was. The two of them held hands as Qin Shiru led Xiao Chen around the dustless residence. He discovered that the dustless residence was exactly the same as when he was in the Eastern Sword Pavilion. Obviously, Qin Shiru had built this place based on the dustless residence in the Eastern Sword Pavilion. Feeling warm in their hearts, the two of them also told each other about their experiences in the past few months. Xiao Chen did not hide anything from Qin Shiru. He directly told Qin Shiru about him, Chen Ling, and Long Qing becoming sworn brothers. After chatting for about 6 hours, Xiao Chen suddenly remembered why Qin Shiru's body was so cold. He carefully examined Qin Shiru's body and did not find any abnormalities. Finally, Xiao Chen asked Qin Shiru to release the cold so that he could observe it carefully. It had to be said that Qin Shiru's cold was difficult for Xiao Chen to resist. It was as if his entire body was about to freeze. This was definitely not an ordinary cold. After personally experiencing Qin Shiru's terrifying cold, Xiao Chen thought to himself. He did not understand why Qin Shiru possessed such a terrifying cold. Unable to find the reason, he could only conclude that it was because of his Yin Soul constitution. However, what puzzled Xiao Chen was that although the Yin Soul constitution was a special constitution, was it really that strong? After entering the central divine realm, Xiao Chen's horizons had been broadened. The Yin Soul constitution might be rare in the Eastern Sun region, but it was nothing in the central divine realm. Compared to his heavenly sword embryo, the Yin Soul constitution was a special constitution that could not be more ordinary. Logically speaking, it should not be able to produce such a powerful cold. Qin Shiru's cold made Xiao Chen very puzzled. Seeing this, Qin Shiru comforted him gently. "Don't worry, husband. Although I don't know how this cold is produced, it is not harmful to me at all. Therefore, you don't have to worry about it." He gestured to Xiao Chen not to worry too much. Hearing this, Xiao Chen could only nod silently. Indeed, since it was not harmful to Qin Shiru's body, he did not need to worry too much about it. Moreover, with this cold, Qin Shiru's strength was absolutely terrifying. This was also the reason why Qin Shiru rarely showed himself in public. Otherwise, with this cold, Qin Shiru would definitely be ranked among the top sky prides. This was because Xiao Chun believed that people like Yao Chongqing would never be able to withstand Qin Shiru's cold. No longer worrying about the cold, Xiao Chun turned to look at Qin Shiru. Qin Shiru was an outstanding beauty. Her teeth were bright, and her beauty outshone the moon and flowers. It seemed that every time he saw Qin Shiru, she would become more beautiful than before. If Qin Shiru was said to be devastatingly beautiful in Eastern Sun region, then she could be described as charming now. Completely attracted by Qin Shiru's beauty, Qin Shiru lowered his head shyly in the face of Xiao Chun's burning gaze. Seeing this, Xiao Chun laughed heartily. Then he picked Qin Shiru up by the waist and walked directly into the house. With such a beauty in his arms, what else was there to say? Chapter 133. After a wild night with Qin Shiru, Xiao Chun spent the next few days in seclusion. On one hand, he enjoyed Qin Shiru's gentleness. On the other hand, he began to practice the nine-heaven sword finger that Chunling had imparted to him. It was indeed an extremely heaven-defying martial skill. Although Xiao Chun did not know what grade the nine-heaven sword finger was, he was certain that it was far beyond a Tian-tier martial skill. He began to practice the nine-heaven sword finger. Of course, Xiao Chun did not slack off when it came to practicing basic sword techniques. At present, Xiao Chun had mastered a total of 68 basic sword techniques. The firmness of his foundation was unimaginable. After all, it was rare for a person to master so many basic sword techniques. However, this was far from Xiao Chun's goal. Knowing the importance of a good foundation, Xiao Chun knew that the 68 basic sword techniques he had mastered were far from enough. The days passed by peacefully and meaningfully. Xiao Chun spent most of his time cultivating himself. At present, Heavenly Sword Peak was in a very precarious situation. Amongst the 9 peaks of 9 Firmaments Palace, Heavenly Sword Peak was like a castle in the sky. It could collapse at any moment. In order to prevent that from happening, the only thing Xiao Chun could rely on was his own strength. To put it bluntly, Tianjin Peak did not have enough strength. If they did, it would not be so easy for Prison Flame Peak to destroy Tianjin Peak. Of course, Xiao Chun was not very useful in protecting Tianjin Peak. After all, no matter how talented he was, Xiao Chun was still too young. It would take a long time for him to fully mature. Thus, Tianjin Peak urgently needed an expert who could control the situation. At the very least, they had to be comparable to the peak lords of the other 8 peaks. Such a person had to be at least a Dao sovereign. However, how could a Dao sovereign come to Tianjin Peak? Judging from the current situation, Tianjin Peak did not have any good ideas. Their only hope was the ruler of the continent of the 9 firmaments. However, even with the ruler of the continent of the 9 firmaments, it was impossible to guard against Prison Flame Peak's secret tricks. He was well aware of the Heavenly Sword Peak's current situation. But that night, when Xiao Chun was called to his residence by Song Xian, Xiao Chun heard even worse news from Song Xian. It was less than 10 days away from returning to the Heavenly Sword Peak. On this night, Song Xian rarely came out of seclusion and immediately called for Xiao Chun. The master and disciple sat opposite each other. Song Xian first asked about Xiao Chun's situation and then asked about it. Chun, or what do you think of the Sky Sword Peak's current situation? He took the initiative to ask Xiao Chun what he thought of the difficulties facing the Heavenly Sword Peak. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun frowned and asked, Master, did something happen? Song Xian keenly sensed that the Heavenly Sword Peak situation wasn't as optimistic as he thought. Upon hearing Xiao Chun's question, Song Xian didn't beat around the bush and nodded with a solemn expression. I already know about Wang Qingfeng. He's right. The new Prison Flame Peak Master doesn't intend to let the Heavenly Sword Peak off and has already taken action. Ever since the incident back then was exposed, the previous Prison Flame Peak Master had mysteriously disappeared. However, a peak couldn't be without a leader for a day, and soon, a Prison Flame Peak Master took over the Prison Flame Peak. But this new Prison Flame Peak Master clearly didn't intend to let the Heavenly Sword Peak off. Perhaps there were still some secrets that outsiders didn't know about. The only thing that could be confirmed was that the new Prison Flame Peak Master had already begun to take action against the Heavenly Sword Peak. Thereafter, from Tsang Xian's explanation, Xiao Chun completely understood the current situation of the Heavenly Sword Peak. The reality was much more dangerous than Xiao Chun had imagined. Firstly, the Prison Flame Peak Master did not openly take action against the Heavenly Sword Peak. But 2 months ago, the Prison Flame Peak had joined forces with the 100 Shadow Peak to send over 1,000 disciples to the Heavenly Sword Peak. In the name of raising the overall strength of the Heavenly Sword Peak, these 1,000 disciples were indeed now under the Heavenly Sword Peak's name. However, the Sky Sword Peak shouldn't think that it was the Sky Sword Peak that had profited, because at the same time that these 1,000 disciples were assigned to the Sky Sword Peak, Prison Flame Peak had also sent a Dao King Realm Head Elder to the Sky Sword Peak. There were also several Dao Transformation Realm and Dao Gate Realm Elders and Deacons. These people had forcefully entered the Heavenly Sword Peak. It was obvious that the Prison Flame Peak wanted to swallow the Heavenly Sword Peak and let the Prison Flame Peak's people control the Heavenly Sword Peak. From destruction to annexation, the nature of this was even worse. But the Heavenly Sword Peak couldn't do anything about it. The entire Heavenly Sword Peak was now completely divided into 2 factions. One faction was the Orthodox Heavenly Sword Peak, led by the Tsang Xian Trio, while the other faction was the disciples of the other 2 peaks, led by the Prison Flame Peak Chief Elder. The 2 factions fought openly and covertly. Of course, in terms of absolute strength, Tsang Xian's group was much weaker. Fortunately, this was 9 Firmament's Palace, and the people from the Prison Flame Peak did not dare to be too brazen. Even so, the wild ambitions of the Prison Flame Peak had been completely exposed. In fact, the Prison Flame Peak Master had already contacted the other peaks and proposed to hold a chief disciple competition for the Heavenly Sword Peak in order to completely seize control of the Heavenly Sword Peak. Once the chief disciple of the Heavenly Sword Peak fell into the hands of the Prison Flame Peak faction, the Heavenly Sword Peak would definitely fall into the hands of the Prison Flame Peak. In this way, the orthodox Heavenly Sword Peak like Tsang Xian would definitely be suppressed. When that happened, the Heavenly Sword Peak would only exist in name and would become a subsidiary of the Prison Flame Peak. After hearing Tsang Xian's words, a cold light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes. He never imagined that the Prison Flame Peak would be so insidious. They did not leave any way out for the Heavenly Sword Peak and wanted to force the Heavenly Sword Peak into a dead end. The chief disciple competition required one to be at the heaven-human stage at the very least. Once the competition began, no one in his faction would be able to put up a fight. Even Qin Hung, the one with the highest cultivation, was only at the perfect earth-clear stage. How could he compete for the chief disciple position? They had already lost before the fight. Seeing the ugly expression on Xiao Chen's face, Tsang Xian sighed softly and said, "Today, the ruler gathered the 9 peak lords to discuss this matter. In the end, he decided to give the Heavenly Sword Peak 2 more years. After 2 years, the chief disciple competition will begin. This is the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, giving us time." Tsang Xian had come out of seclusion today because the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds had summoned him. The matter of the Heavenly Sword Peak Chief Disciple competition had already been decided. The ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds stood his ground and gave the Heavenly Sword Peak 2 years' time. As for whether the Heavenly Sword Peak could win the Chief Disciple competition after 2 years, that would depend on themselves. This was what the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds had personally said to Tsang Xian. 2 years' time. After hearing Tsang Xian's words, determination quickly emerged in Xiao Chen's eyes. He was at the perfect, mysterious Yuan stage. Would he be able to break through to the heaven-human stage in 2 years? The time was still a little too short. However, there was no way out. He could only fight with his life on the line. When he saw the change in Xiao Chen's expression, Tsang Xian nodded in gratification. "Chen, I told you this today, because I hope that you will be able to win the chief disciple position in 2 years. You must not let the prison flame peak succeed. Chapter 134. Only 2 years was a very short time, but Song Xian had no choice. He could only place his hopes on Xiao Chun. Although Qin Heng and the other core disciples already had the cultivation of the Earth Mirror Realm and would definitely break through to the Heaven Realm within 2 years, it was still far from enough. Their battle strength was still lacking. Therefore, in the entire Sky Sword Peak, only Xiao Chun had the hope of stopping the Prison Flame Peak. Of course, all of this was based on the premise that Xiao Chun could break through to the Heaven Realm within 2 years. Without the cultivation of the Heaven Realm, all of this was just empty talk. From Song Xian's words, Xiao Chun could feel a touch of seriousness and helplessness. There was indeed no other way. All of the pressure could only be placed on Xiao Chun's shoulders. Only Xiao Chun could bear this pressure. He nodded solemnly. To break through to the Heaven Realm within 2 years was definitely impossible for ordinary people. However, Xiao Chun had the disposition of a proud king. 2 years should be enough. Song Xian truthfully told Xiao Chun the situation of the Sky Sword Peak. At the same time, he also said that Xiao Chun could freely use all of the cultivation resources of the Sky Sword Peak during these 2 years. As long as Xiao Chun could quickly raise his cultivation base, everything would be worth it. A disciple could use all of the cultivation resources of the Sky Sword Peak. How much power was this? At the same time, it also meant that the Sky Sword Peak was really betting everything on Xiao Chun. If Xiao Chun won, the Sky Sword Peak would definitely rise. If Xiao Chun lost, the Sky Sword Peak would be consigned to eternal damnation. After chatting with Song Xian for more than 4 hours, Xiao Chun returned to the dustless residence. Since he could use all of the cultivation resources of the Sky Sword Peak, Xiao Chun also planned to go to the Sky Sword Hall to take a look. The Sky Sword Hall was the place where the Sky Sword Peak stored all kinds of treasured swords. Xiao Chun naturally went there for the Heavenly Sword Embryo. He would choose a batch of suitable treasured swords to feed the Heavenly Sword Embryo so that it could grow faster. After a silent night, early the next morning, Xiao Chun practiced the 9 Heaven Sword Finger once. In just 10 days, Xiao Chun had already mastered the first finger of the 9 Heaven Sword Finger. Just as he was about to leave for the Heavenly Sword Hall, the main elder of the Prison Flame Peak came to visit him personally. His name was Zhao Lu, and his cultivation was at the initial Dao King stage. He was once the chief elder of the Prison Flame Peak, but he was now the chief elder of the Sky Sword Peak. He was on par with the Song Xian trio, and had formed his own faction in the Sky Sword Peak. He was eyeing the position of Peak Master of the Sky Sword Peak covetously. He never had any contact with Zhao Lu, but he took the initiative to visit today. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Chun still asked Qing Luo to bring him to the main hall. In the main hall, Xiao Chun finally saw the new Sky Sword Peak Master Elder. He was middle-aged and had an ordinary appearance. However, his eyes were extremely sharp. Anyone who could become a Dao King stage expert naturally couldn't be a simple person. He sized up Zhao Lu, and at the same time, Zhao Lu was also sizing up Xiao Chun, the famous King of Prides. Due to the incident in the city of the Medicine King, the news that Xiao Chun was still alive had already spread throughout the Central Earth Divine region. Moreover, Xiao Chun was now ranked among the top 10 King of Prides again. Moreover, the latest edition of the Heavens Pride ranking had already published Xiao Chun's life in detail. Through the Heavens Pride ranking, the world could clearly and directly understand the growth process of this King of Prides. This was a change in the outside world. Of course, Xiao Chun wasn't the slightest bit interested in this. These were all false reputations. The two exchanged glances. In the end, Zhao Lu was the first to speak. Zhao Lu laughed heartily and said enthusiastically, "Haha, you're indeed a talent, as expected of a disciple of my Sky Sword Peak. With such a disciple in my Sky Sword Peak, why should I worry about not soaring into the sky?" He didn't show any hostility. On the contrary, he was very enthusiastic. Hearing Zhao Lu's words, Xiao Chun replied calmly, "Head Elder, may I know why you've come today?" "Nothing much. I've just heard that you've returned safely, so I've come to take a look," replied Zhao Lu. "Oh, since that's the case, I have other matters to attend to. Please excuse me." Zhao Lu had only come to visit him. Who would believe that? However, since he didn't say anything, Xiao Chun naturally wouldn't ask. After all, nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. He immediately turned around and prepared to leave. He didn't show any mercy. Seeing this, a cold light flashed through Zhao Lu's eyes. However, it was only a flash. Then, he withdrew his smile and said indifferently, "Xiao Chun, don't be in such a hurry. I've indeed come to find you today for a matter. Your talent is rare in this world. The Prison Flame Peak Lord thinks highly of you. Today, I've come to tell you that as long as you agree to join the Prison Flame Peak, the Peak Lord will definitely not treat you unfairly. In the future, you will definitely soar to the sky. How about it?" Without further ado, Zhao Lu directly stated his purpose. It was obvious that he had come today to rope in Xiao Chun. As one of the 10 prides of the heavenly Qin continent, Xiao Chun's talent was unquestionable. Even the Prison Flame Peak Lord was fond of him. However, towards the Prison Flame Peak's attempt to rope him in, Xiao Chun coldly smiled. "Then I'll thank the Prison Flame Peak Lord. However, it's a pity that I haven't had much luck since I was young. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint the Prison Flame Peak." Without the slightest hesitation, he directly rejected the offer. Hearing this, Zhao Luan hurriedly said, "Xiao Chun, you better think this through. You won't have a good ending if you stay in the Sky Sword Peak. It's not enough for a person to just have talent. You must have enough cultivation resources as support. You should be a smart person and know what I mean. There's no need to ruin yourself for the sake of the Sky Sword Peak." There wasn't much anger in his voice. However, the threat in his words was self-evident, threatening Xiao Chun. Hearing this, Xiao Chun suddenly burst into laughter. "Haha, from what you've said, the Prison Flame Peak has already eaten up my Sky Sword Peak. Originally, the various grudges between the Prison Flame Peak and the Sky Sword Peak had nothing to do with me. This time, if the Prison Flame Peak could calmly accept the return of the Sky Sword Peak, I definitely wouldn't find trouble with the Prison Flame Peak. However, it's a pity that the Prison Flame Peak doesn't leave us any way out. Since that's the case, don't blame me. As for my future, there's no need for Lord Elder to worry about it." After speaking, Xiao Chun directly turned around and left. The moment Xiao Chun stepped out of the main hall, Zhao Lu coldly said, "All right, since that's the case, then hand over Wang Qingfeng. He's a disciple of the Prison Flame Peak." Xiao Chun was determined not to join the Prison Flame Peak. This was something that Zhao Lu already understood. Since that was the case, he would return Wang Qingfeng. After all, Wang Qingfeng was a disciple of the Prison Flame Peak. Now that he had been captured by Xiao Chun, if the Prison Flame Peak didn't give an explanation, it would obviously be an extremely humiliating matter. Therefore, Zhao Lu had 2 tasks today. One was to rope in Xiao Chun, but unfortunately he failed. As for the other, it was to ask for Wang Qingfeng. Please collect, recommend, reward. Chapter 135. Understanding that it was impossible to recruit Xiao Chun, Zhao Lu gave up on the idea. Instead, he turned to Xiao Chun to ask for Wang Qingfeng. Hearing Zhao Lu's words, Xiao Chun paused. Then, he turned around and said coolly, "Wang Qingfeng made a small mistake. I will teach him a lesson. Don't worry, I won't kill him. Once he learns his lesson, I will release him back to Prison Flame Peak." Wang Qingfeng had dared to harass Qin Shuru while he was away. Naturally, Xiao Chun would not let him off so easily. As for Prison Flame Peak, Xiao Chun was not afraid. This was 9 Firmament's palace. There were some rules that had to be followed. Prison Flame Peak dared not do anything openly. He also dared not report this matter to the ruler of the 9 Firmaments. Truth was on Xiao Chen's side. If the ruler of the 9 Firmaments palace found out about this, Wang Qingfeng's fate would be even more miserable. After saying that, Xiao Chun did not wait for Zhao Lu to reply. Instead, he simply walked away. Zhao Lu, who was behind him, said furiously, "Fine, fine, fine. Xiao Chun, you chose this. Don't regret it." Clearly, Zhao Lu had been thoroughly infuriated by Xiao Chen's attitude. It was one thing for Xiao Chun to refuse Prison Flame Peak's offer, but Xiao Chun had actually refused to give him face when it came to Wang Qingfeng. Even with Zhao Lu's temperament, he was infuriated. A Dao King was infuriated. If this were outside, Xiao Chun would have a headache. However, this was Nine Firmament's palace. There were some rules that even Zhao Lu had to abide by. Not to mention, Xiao Chun was a proud king, someone highly regarded by the ruler of the Nine Firmament's palace. No matter how infuriated Zhao Lu was, he would not dare openly attack Xiao Chun. At most, he would secretly try to trip Xiao Chun up. Due to the rules, Zhao Lu's threat was greatly reduced. Naturally, this was not a long-term solution. After leaving the immaculate residence, Xiao Chun sighed. Sigh. It's all about strength. Zhao Lu is a Dao King. Master and the others are simply incapable of fighting him head-on. Even if they can rely on Nine Firmament's palace's rules to stabilize the situation for now, they're still in a disadvantageous position. He was well aware that the root cause of all this was because his side did not have enough strength. The Prison Flame Peak only needed to send a single chief elder to suppress Song Xian and the others until they could hardly breathe. However, there was nothing he could do. There were no shortcuts on the path of cultivation. He could only take it one step at a time. Xiao Chun stopped thinking about these things because it was useless to think about it. The most important task for Xiao Chun now was to raise his cultivation level to the celestial realm within 2 years. As for other things, there was no way he could think about them for the time being. Since Xiao Chun had come directly to the Heavenly Sword Hall, he must have received Song Xian's order, so the elders in charge of guarding the Heavenly Sword Hall did not stop him. However, the elders of Zhao Lu's faction were not so easy to talk to. Due to Zhao Lu's presence, the various halls of Heavenly Sword Peak had been filled with his men. After being stopped by the elders in Zhao Lu's faction, Xiao Chen's face gradually turned cold. "I have my master's orders. I can enter and leave Heavenly Sword Hall as I please." "What? Are you trying to stop me?" "I don't know what you're talking about. I only know that without Elder Zhao's orders, I cannot let you enter Heavenly Sword Hall," the elder said coolly when he heard Xiao Chen's words. He only obeyed Zhao Lu's orders and could not enter Heavenly Sword Hall. At the same time, Zhao Lu also received news that Xiao Chun was heading to Heavenly Sword Hall. He sneered and immediately ordered the elders in his faction that without his orders, Xiao Chun was not allowed to take a single step into Heavenly Sword Hall. Didn't Xiao Chun say that the outcome of the chief disciple selection would be decided in 2 years? Fine, then I will cut off your cultivation resources. Without the support of cultivation resources, let's see how you cultivate. Xiao Chun was forbidden from entering Heavenly Sword Hall. At the same time, Song Xian was also furious when he received the news. He did not expect Zhao Lu to be so excessive. He angrily rushed to Zhao Lu's residence. As soon as he entered, Song Xian coldly shouted, "Zhao Lu, what is the meaning of this?" "Oh, Peak Master, what's wrong? I didn't do anything." Zhao Lu sneered in response to Song Xian's angry shout. "Nothing. I ordered Xiao Chun to enter Heavenly Sword Hall. Why did you order your people to stop him?" said Song Xian. "Oh, so that's what you want. Peak Master, you don't know. Xiao Chun is just a disciple. According to the rules, if he wants to enter Heavenly Sword Hall, he must have enough contribution points. Unfortunately, he doesn't. What I did was right? Said Zhao Lu. Song Xian deliberately pretended to be confused. However, he knew very well what Zhao Lu was thinking. He wanted to cut off Xiao Chen's cultivation resources. Today, it was Heavenly Sword Hall. Tomorrow, it could be Martial Skills Hall. Without cultivation resources, no matter how talented Xiao Chen was, he could not break through to the heaven-human stage in 2 years. Song Xian looked coldly at Zhao Lu. He did not want to waste time talking nonsense with him and directly shouted coldly, "Zhao Lu, I can tolerate other things, but if you dare to attack Xiao Chun, don't blame me. I will ask you one last time. Are you going to step aside or not? It was impossible for Song Xian to step aside. If Zhao Lu didn't step aside, Song Xian would not be afraid, even if the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds heard about it. Zhao Lu was helpless when he saw Song Xian's crazy expression. He was forced to join Heavenly Sword Peak by the Peak Master of Prison Flame Peak, but the current Peak Master of Heavenly Sword Peak was Song Xian and the other two. Therefore, Song Xian's words were orders in Heavenly Sword Peak. What Zhao Lu had done was, frankly speaking, offending his superiors. In the past, because his cultivation level was higher than Song Xian and the other two, Song Xian and the other two would tolerate him. But this matter had obviously touched Song Xian's bottom line. And if Song Xian directly reported this matter to the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds, Zhao Lu would not be able to explain himself. After all, he was only a chief elder in name, while Song Xian was the Peak Master of Heavenly Sword Peak. If he openly disobeyed a Peak Master's orders, he would be punished. After remaining silent for a while, Zhao Lu said, "All right, I promise not to obstruct Xiao Chun, but you can only give Xiao Chun the cultivation resources of your faction. As for the cultivation resources of our faction, you can't touch Xiao Chun. That's the bottom line. If you don't agree, go ahead and cause trouble. Even if the ruler of the continent of the Nine Clouds hears about it, I'll say the same thing." The Sky Sword Peak was now divided into two factions. As such, the cultivation resources were naturally divided into two pieces. The two factions each had one piece. They could not obstruct Xiao Chun, but Song Xian could only give the cultivation resources of his faction to Xiao Chun. Song Xian ground his teeth when he heard that, but there was nothing he could do. His faction was inferior to Zhao Lu's. It was already rare and precious to be able to obtain half of the cultivation resources for Xiao Chun. "Zhao Lu, you and your Prison Flame Peak will definitely regret this," said Song Xian coldly, looking at Zhao Lu. Then, Song Xian turned around and left. He could only obtain half of the cultivation resources for Xiao Chun. Song Xian was furious. Please add, recommend, reward. Chapter 136. In the end, Xiao Chun was able to obtain ordinary cultivation resources. After learning this news, Xiao Chun didn't show too much disappointment. This was the reality, and it was already commendable that Song Xian could achieve this. After reaching an agreement with Zhao Lu, Xiao Chun successfully entered the Heavenly Sword Hall. After strolling around the Heavenly Sword Hall, Xiao Chun finally chose 20 mysterious weapons to take away. Taking away so many mysterious weapons at once. Although the elders of the Song Xian faction were puzzled, they didn't say anything. On the way back from the Heavenly Sword Hall to the Dustless Residence, Xiao Chun immediately began to devour swords. After devouring 3 mysterious swords in a row, the Heavenly Sword embryo stopped moving. "I'm full." Looking at the Heavenly Sword embryo that no longer devoured, Xiao Chun softly muttered to himself. It seemed that the Heavenly Sword embryo had a limit to the number of swords it could devour at a time. It was just that he didn't know how long it would take for the Heavenly Sword embryo to digest after such a full meal. Since the Heavenly Sword embryo no longer devoured swords, Xiao Chun planned to go to the Sword Room to cultivate. The Sword Room was a cultivation treasure of the Heavenly Sword Peak. It was created by the previous Peak Master of the Heavenly Sword Peak, Song Feng, and was divided into 2 levels. The first was the Sword Chi Room, which could produce Sword Chi from the beginner level all the way to the perfect level. Above the Sword Chi Room was the Sword Intent Room, which could produce Sword Intent. Of course, for the current Xiao Chun, he didn't need the Sword Intent Room, but the Sword Chi Room had too many benefits for him. Not only could it temper his spiritual power, it could help him break through faster, but it could also help his Sword Chi break through. To enter the Sword Chi Room to cultivate, he called Qin Shu, and the two headed in the direction of the Sword Room. Along the way, the disciples of the Song Xian faction all respectfully bowed to Xiao Chun when they saw him, but the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction were clearly filled with hostility. At the same time, their gazes towards Qin Shiru were filled with bestial lust, which made Xiao Chun very unhappy. Sensing the growing coldness from Xiao Chun, Qin Shiru held Xiao Chen's arm and gently consoled, "Husband, a little impatience will spoil great plans. The chief disciple selection in 2 years is the most important." Upon hearing Qin Shiru's words, Xiao Chen nodded, and the two arrived at the sword room. There were a total of 68 sword rooms, 50 of which were sword chi rooms, and 18 were sword intent rooms. After informing the elders in charge, the elders of Zhao Lu's faction didn't stop Xiao Chen this time, and allowed the elders of the Song Xian faction to open 2 sword chi rooms for him. Ordinary disciples needed to pay contribution points to enter the sword chi rooms, but Xiao Chun didn't need to. At the same time, there was no time limit. As long as Xiao Chun could endure, he could stay in the sword chi rooms for as long as he wanted. Because of Xiao Chun, Qin Shiru also enjoyed the same heaven-defying treatment. The two entered 2 connected sword chi rooms one after the other. The layout of the rooms was very simple. In the secret room, which was only 5 or 6 square meters in size, there was only a bare futon placed in the center. There was no need to manually control it. The sword chi in the sword chi rooms would be adjusted according to the level of the person who entered. In other words, if Xiao Chun had advanced perfection level sword chi, then the sword chi emitted from the sword chi rooms would be at the advanced perfection level. Through the endless sword chi of the advanced perfection level, Xiao Chen's spiritual power, physical body, and sword chi were constantly refined. In such an environment, cultivation was naturally twice the result with half the effort. However, everything had its pros and cons, because the sword chi wouldn't stop unless one walked out of the sword chi room. Therefore, the time one could stay in the sword chi room was extremely limited. In the records of the entire Tianjin Peak, the person who stayed in the sword chi room for the longest time only lasted for 3 days. Sitting cross-legged on the futon, a fierce sword chi soared into the sky from the sword chi room. It had obviously reached the advanced perfection level. The sword chi whistled and penetrated Xiao Chen's body through his pores. Under the condensation of the sword chi, Xiao Chen's spiritual power, meridians, physical body, and sword chi were all constantly growing. It was not easy to resist the sword chi, but Xiao Chen's physical body had become stronger after being nourished by the blood pill. Compared to others, Xiao Chun was very relaxed at this moment. The corner of his mouth unconsciously revealed a smile, and he sighed from the bottom of his heart. As expected of one of the 7 overlord forces, their foundation is really strong. The sword chi room was indeed a treasured place for cultivation. Compared to the treasured places in the Eastern Sword Pavilion, the difference was simply too great. The difference was like heaven and earth. He was very satisfied with the cultivation environment of the sword chi room. While Xiao Chun entered the sword chi room, Zhao Lu came to the Prison Flame Peak to personally meet the Peak Master of the Prison Flame Peak. The new Peak Master of the Prison Flame Peak was called Zhan Tianlei, and his cultivation was at the initial Dao Sovereign level. Because he had just broken through to the Dao Sovereign level, Zhan Tianlei's strength could only be considered the weakest among the 9 Peak Masters. Even so, it was still enough to crush the Song Xian trio from the Tianjin Peak. Dressed in a black robe, Zhan Tianlei had a feminine appearance. As the Peak Master of Prison Flame Peak, Zhan Tianlei still had the appearance of a young man, just like a rich young master. However, his eyes gave off an extremely sinister feeling at all times. Sitting cross-legged on a futon in the cultivation room, Zhan Tianlei looked indifferently at Zhao Lu, who had his head lowered and slowly said, "What's the use of a proud king who can't grow? It seems that I haven't given Song Xian and the others enough pressure. I think the Tianjin Peak should be more chaotic." Zhao Lu, do you understand what I mean? This subordinate understands. Hearing Zhan Tianlei's words, Zhao Lu nodded respectfully. Hearing Zhao Lu's reply, Zhan Tianlei slowly closed his eyes. Then, Zhao Lu respectfully withdrew from the room. He wanted to make the heavenly sword peak even more chaotic. After receiving Zhang Tianlei's instructions, Zhao Lu naturally did not dare to disobey. Unsurprisingly, the heavenly sword peak fell into chaos. The source of this chaos was naturally the conflict between the disciples of the two sections. Although the disciples of the two sects didn't get along well with each other, they restrained themselves. But now, with Zhao Lu's secret instructions, the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction naturally had no more scruples. For a time, the conflict between the disciples of the two sects erupted, and there were fights almost every day. It was complete chaos. In just 2 days, more than 100 disciples of the two sects had been injured because of the conflict. As the chaos spread, the rules of the Tianjin Peak were completely non-existent. It was no exaggeration to say that the disciples of the two sects would fight to the death whenever they met. Even the deacons of the two sects had several conflicts. Only the higher-ups of the two sects didn't have any conflicts. Faced with the increasingly chaotic situation, Song Xian and the others were burning with anger. They gathered together, and Song Long looked at Song Xian and Song Yun as he coldly shouted, "Zhao Lu is a bastard. He actually secretly instructed the disciples of his faction to have conflicts with us. If this continues, my Tianjin Peak will be in complete chaos." Chapter 137. In a short span of 2 days, the Sky Sword Peak had turned into a complete mess. The three of them sat together in a circle. Hearing Song Long's curses, Song Yun said coldly, "Today, Zhao Lu sent someone to tell me that we should release Wang Qingfeng. Otherwise, the Prison Flame Peak will not let this matter rest. The chaos now is just the beginning. That bastard, he's talking nonsense. Who does Wang Qingfeng think he is? Does he deserve to make the Prison Flame Peak go to war?" Song Long cursed. This Wang Qingfeng is naturally just an excuse. The Prison Flame Peak will definitely not make such a big fuss over him. I believe that Zhang Tianlei was the one behind all of this. His goal is likely to be to show us who's boss and pressure Chun, forcing him to join the Prison Flame Peak. Song Xin calmly said when he heard Song Long's curses. Such a clumsy method naturally couldn't escape Song Xian's eyes. Wang Qingfeng was just cannon fodder. But the Prison Flame Peak had already used such a clumsy method, but Song Xian and the other two couldn't do anything. If the three of them were a little stronger, they wouldn't need to be much stronger. As long as they could take down Zhao Lu, this matter would be easily resolved. They could directly suppress Zhao Lu and the matter would naturally be resolved. However, the three of them were no match for Zhao Lu. They were not even a match for Zhao Lu. The three of them were only in the Dao Gate realm. Even if they joined forces, it was impossible for them to defeat Zhao Lu. In this way, even if they had seen through everything, they had no ability to stop it. In the end, Song Yun suggested, "Why don't we go and find the Lord Ruler?" He wanted to talk to the ruler of the continent of the 9 clouds, but when he heard that, Song Xian shook his head and said, "Even though the ruler can solve the problem easily, it's Celestial Sword Peak's problem. If the three of us can't even solve it, and the ruler has to get involved, what do you think the ruler will think? Will the three of us still be fit to be the peak masters of the Heavenly Sword Peak? If we do that, I'm afraid we won't even need to wait for the chief disciple selection in 2 years." They couldn't find the Lord Ruler of the 9 clouds. As the saying goes, don't wash your dirty linen in public. If they went to the Lord Ruler of the 9 clouds for such a small matter, it would only prove that the three of them weren't capable enough to manage the Heavenly Sword Peak. Then what should we do? We can't do this. We can't do that. Are we supposed to just watch? Song Xian's words angered Azure Dragon. Sigh, let's take it one step at a time. Zhao Lu doesn't dare to make a big deal out of this. Let's wait and see. Song Xian sighed. The three of them had no other way. Xiao Chun didn't know anything about the outside world. It had been 3 days since he entered the Sword Chi room. At this time, many disciples of Zhao Lu's faction had gathered around the Sword Chi room. Needless to say, their purpose was obviously to find trouble with Xiao Chun. The disciples of the two factions were already in constant conflict. Under such circumstances, if they could defeat or even humiliate the representative of the Tsangshuan faction, Xiao Chun, it would definitely be a huge blow to the Tsangshuan faction's morale. Hence, the crowd was stubbornly waiting for Xiao Chun to emerge from his secluded cultivation. There was no need to doubt Xiao Chen's reputation among the Tsangshuan faction's disciples. Therefore, as long as they defeated Xiao Chun, it would definitely be a huge blow to the Tsangshuan faction's morale. It's been 3 days. He seems to have broken the record, right? One of the disciples whispered as he looked at the sword chi room Xiao Chun was in. Yes, it has indeed been 3 days. Xiao Chun had been in the sword chi room for 3 days. Even the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction were a little shocked by his performance. He had already broken the record of the sword chi room. They really didn't know how Xiao Chun did it. They were stubbornly guarding Xiao Chun. While the crowd was whispering because Xiao Chun had broken the record, the door of the sword chi room next to Xiao Chen's room slowly opened, and Qin Shu, dressed in a green long skirt, slowly walked out. She glanced at the sword chi room Xiao Chun was in, but the door was still closed. It was obvious that Xiao Chun was still cultivating. She didn't know how long Xiao Chun would cultivate. She planned to return to the dustless residence first. After all, she couldn't wait here. She slowly walked out of the sword chi room. Just as Qin Shu arrived at the entrance of the sword chi room, the numerous disciples of Zhao Lu's faction gathered here one after another with infatuated expressions. Qin Shu, they all knew the identity of Qin Shu. Such a great beauty naturally had a great reputation in the Tianjin Peak. At the same time, they not only knew the identity of Qin Shu, but also knew that Qin Shu was Xiao Chen's wife, and that the two had already gotten married in the Danyang region. After a moment of infatuation, a disciple suddenly said, Qin Shu is Xiao Chen's wife. If we take Qin Shu to our bed, what do you think the disciples of the Tsangshuan faction will do? Some people already had evil thoughts towards Qin Shu. A man wouldn't be able to resist such a great beauty. Hearing this disciple's words, the other disciples immediately became excited. Yes, the disciples of the two factions were constantly fighting, and this matter was secretly incited by Lord Zhao Lu. As a result, even if they did something to Qin Shu, Lord Zhao Lu would be responsible for it. They didn't need to bear any responsibility, and they could also ruthlessly attack the Tsangshuan faction. In addition, they could kiss the beauty of the goddess of their dreams. It was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Without any hesitation, the lustful crowd directly blocked Qin Shu's path. The person in the lead looked at Qin Shu with a lewd smile and said, Junior sister Shui Ro, where are you in such a hurry to go? I have something to trouble you to come with me. The beastly desire in his heart was not concealed in the slightest. Seeing this, Qin Shu coldly spat out a word. Scram. These guys made him feel disgusted. Except for Xiao Chun, Qin Shu was cold to everyone. But after hearing this, the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction had no intention of leaving. Instead, they had already surrounded Qin Shu. The person who spoke before spoke again. Junior sister's temper is really fiery. However, it's not up to you today. You have to go whether you want to or not. If you don't want to, then senior brother can only use force. At that time, if I offend the beauty, junior sister, don't blame senior brother for being rough. It was obvious that they were going to forcibly take Qin Shu away today. Even if they didn't wait for Xiao Chun, they could wait for Qin Shu. At the thought of having a chance to kiss Qin Shu, the excitement in everyone's hearts had long been unable to be suppressed. The coldness had already begun to spread. In the face of such frivolous ridicule, Qin Shu was completely enraged. Extreme coldness constantly emitted from his body. At the same time, an angry roar sounded from not far away. You're all courting death. I'd like to see who has the ability to take Qin Shu away today. Accompanied by this voice, Qin Heng and Qi Yin strode over with a group of Tsangshuan faction disciples. The angry roar just now had come from Qi Yin. Chapter 138. Qin Hung and Qi Yin led a large group of over 100 disciples from the Zhongshuan sect. Qin Shiru was Xiao Qin's wife, and these guys wanted to attack her. Given Qi Yan's fiery temper, a battle was naturally unavoidable. Sure enough, seeing Qi Yin and the others approaching, the disciple from Zhao Lu's faction opened his mouth and said, "Today I—" Before he could finish his sentence, Qi Yin had already attacked him and scolded him. "What a load of nonsense. I'm not here to talk nonsense with you. Beat him up." Without saying a word, Qi Yin attacked. Then, the disciples from the two factions began to fight. There were hundreds of people fighting, and for a time, a large-scale fight broke out at the entrance of the sword room. The two sides fought back and forth, and it was obvious that they were really angry. The disciples from the two factions had become more and more unscrupulous over the past few days, and the anger in their hearts had become increasingly difficult to control. Qin Shu naturally also joined in, but in terms of overall strength, the Zhao Lu faction was stronger. After all, they all came from the prison Flame Peak, while the disciples from the Zhongshuan sect were basically from the Eastern Sun region. There was a gap in their cultivation environment since childhood, so the disciples from the Zhongshuan sect were indeed weaker than the Zhao Lu faction. Fortunately, the disciples from the Zhongshuan sect had the upper hand in terms of numbers, so they were still able to fight with the disciples from the Zhao Lu faction. The situation grew increasingly chaotic, and soon, some disciples were injured. Approximately 15 minutes later, Zhang Xian and the other two rushed over upon hearing the news. Upon seeing such a large-scale battle, Zhang Xian immediately roared, "All of you stop." Hearing Zhang Xian's roar, the disciples from the two factions slowly stopped. Then, Zhao Lu appeared, and the higher-ups of the two factions came together to stop the battle. He appeared in time to stop the chaotic battle between the disciples of the two sections. But even so, many people from both sides were injured, including Qin Hung, Qi Yin, and Qin Shuero. Their injuries were not light. There was nothing they could do. They were the ones who had been specially taken care of. The pressure they had to bear was much greater than the others. Xiao Chun was unaware of the battle outside the sword room. He personally escorted Qin Shura back to the dustless residence and checked his injuries. After confirming that there were no major problems, Zhang Xian gave him some healing pills before leaving. The situation became more and more serious with each passing day. From the small skirmishes at the beginning to today's melee of hundreds of people, the relationship between the two factions was completely strained. Now, as long as the disciples of the two factions met, there was no way they wouldn't fight. Another week passed. It had been 9 days since Xiao Chun had entered the Sword Chi room. Such a long time had naturally attracted the attention of many disciples. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. The fact that Xiao Chun could stay in the Sword Chi room for such a long time had indeed exceeded everyone's expectations. In these 9 days, Xiao Chen's harvest was also extremely huge. With the support of many pills, Xiao Chen's cultivation had risen to the perfect mysterious yuan stage in just a few days. Moreover, his sword qi had also broken through from the perfect stage to the perfect stage. The breakthrough in his cultivation and the increase in his sword qi weren't what excited Xiao Chen the most. What excited Xiao Chen the most was the blood pill in his body. He didn't know if it was because of the sword qi room, but he had directly absorbed 1/10 of the blood pill in his body. It was because Xiao Chen had absorbed so much of the blood pill's energy that Xiao Chen's physical body was now comparable to an Earth Mirror expert. His cultivation hadn't reached the Earth Mirror realm, but his physical strength had already reached the Earth Mirror realm. No one would believe it if this was said, because even a body-refining martial artist couldn't do this. He slowly opened his eyes and fiercely punched out. The sound of a sonic boom was heard, and he nodded with satisfaction. Xiao Chen only used the strength of his physical body for this punch. However, it was no exaggeration to say that even an Earth Mirror expert wouldn't be able to withstand it. He could compete with an Earth Mirror expert with just the strength of his physical body. If he combined it with his swordsmanship and cultivation, he would probably be able to fight an Earth Mirror expert with the strength of his physical body. Of course, this was just a guess. He would only know the specifics after a real battle. It was already very terrifying to cross an entire cultivation level to fight an enemy, and only heaven prides could do it. Xiao Chun was able to cross an entire cultivation level on top of crossing an entire cultivation level. Such combat strength was already heaven-defying. It was almost time to leave. Xiao Chun felt very tired after cultivating in the Sword Chi room for 9 days. It was time for him to take a rest. Otherwise, if he continued, it would cause unavoidable injuries to his body, and the losses wouldn't make up for it. After 9 days, Xiao Chun finally walked out of the Sword Chi room. Although his clothes were torn by Sword Chi and his hair was a little messy, it couldn't conceal Xiao Chen's heroic spirit. Seeing that there was no one in the Sword Chi room next door, he guessed that Qin Shiru should have returned to the dustless residence. He strode to the entrance of the Sword Chi room. Just as Xiao Chun was about to return to the dustless residence, a Zhongshuan sect disciple ran up to Xiao Chun with a worried face. "Senior brother Xiao Chun, you've finally come out." "You don't know, senior sister Shui Ro is injured." The disciple was obviously waiting for Xiao Chun here. When he heard that Qin Shiru was injured, a cold light flashed in Xiao Chen's eyes, but his tone remained calm as he asked, "What happened?" Qin Shiru was injured on the Heavenly Sword Peak. In response to Xiao Chen's question, the disciple recounted the chaotic battle that day to Xiao Chun. After listening to the disciple's account, Xiao Chun didn't say anything and directly rushed to the dustless residence. Xiao Chun soon returned to the dustless residence and immediately found Qin Shiru. A week had passed, and Qin Shiru's injuries were almost healed thanks to the healing pills left by Zhongxian. Xiao Chun carefully examined his body and personally confirmed that he was fine. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. However, although Qin Shiru was fine, the anger in Xiao Chen's heart hadn't subsided in the slightest. Along the way, Xiao Chun also knew that the prison flame peak was pressuring the heavenly sword peak. The conflict between the disciples of the two sects was just one of Zhao Lu's methods. Of course, he was also involved. At the same time, Xiao Chun also knew that the prison flame peak wanted Song Xian to hand over Wang Qingfeng. He easily saw through everything. While comforting Qin Shiru, he asked Qin Luo to summon Qin Heng and Qi Yin. Soon, the two arrived at the dustless residence. As soon as they entered, Qin Heng said with a smile, "Junior brother Xiao Chun, you've finally come out. Why are you in such a hurry to find us?" "Of course there's something. I'm going to kill someone," Xiao Chun, who was sitting side by side with Qin Shiru, coldly replied. "I'm going to kill someone." Xiao Chen's reply stunned Qin Heng. "What does this mean?" "This is the heavenly sword peak. Xiao Chun wants to kill someone? Please add, recommend, reward." Chapter 139. Qin Shiru's injury caused Xiao Chen's killing intent to soar. However, this was Heavenly Sword Peak. Disciples were forbidden from killing each other. For Xiao Chun to kill someone, he must be severely punished. Junior brother Xiao Chun, do not cause trouble. Killing a fellow disciple is a serious crime, Qin Heng advised, a very serious expression on his face. Hearing Qin Heng's words, Xiao Chun shook his head slightly and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I will not violate the sect's rules." Killing intent overflowed. However, Xiao Chun was not foolish enough to openly violate 9 Firmament's Palace's rules. After saying that, Xiao Chun whispered something to Qin Heng. After saying that, Qin Heng's face eased slightly. However, there was still a look of concern on his face. "Is that feasible?" "Senior brother, don't worry. I am confident," Xiao Chun replied. After giving Qin Heng some instructions, Qin Heng heard Xiao Chen's reply. After a moment of silence, Qin Heng nodded his head slightly, agreeing to Xiao Chen's request. Soon, he brought Qi Yin away. After a night of silence, early the next morning, a massive arena was erected outside the residence of the disciples from Zhao Lu's faction. A flag was erected on the arena of life and death. The words "Arena of Life and Death" were written on the flag. Arena of Life and Death. Someone had erected the Arena of Life and Death in Heavenly Sword Peak. Clearly, This was Xiao Chen's doing. At that very moment, Xiao Chen was standing on the arena of life and death. He stood proudly on the arena of life and death. As the name suggests, upon stepping on the arena of life and death, one's life and death would be decided by fate. Even if one were to be killed, the sect would not care. After all, one would die on the arena of life and death. Heavenly Sword Peak also had its own arena of life and death. However, this was the first time someone had used the arena of life and death to block the entrance. Seeing Xiao Chen standing proudly on the arena of life and death, Qin Heng and the others who were standing beside him revealed tangled expressions. They were worried about Xiao Chen's safety. However, as more and more disciples from Zhao Lu's faction gathered around, Xiao Chen slowly spoke up. Today, Xiao Chen has specially set up the life and death stage here. All the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction, whose cultivation is below the earth realm, can come up to the stage. Life and death are predestined. Who dares to come up to the stage and fight? Xiao Chen challenged all the disciples in Zhao Lu's faction, whose cultivation was below the earth illumination realm. Upon hearing this, the disciples in Zhao Lu's faction all had ugly expressions on their faces. However, for a moment, no one dared to step forward. After all, Xiao Chen's reputation was not for show. As one of the 10 great king prides, he was practically invincible under the same cultivation level. The only ones who could fight against him at the same cultivation level were probably the other 9 fellow king prides. Seeing that no one dared to step onto the stage, Xiao Chen smiled disdainfully and said, "What's wrong? No one dares to step onto the stage and fight? In that case, I'll give you some preferential treatment. Anyone whose cultivation base is below that of the Earth Mirror realm can come onto the stage and fight. How about it? I'll challenge all of you to a challenge that's one major realm above yours. Do you dare to accept?" Once again, the requirements were relaxed. Martial artists who had entered the Earth Clear Mirror realm could also fight on the stage. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, not only Zhao Lu's faction's disciples, but even Qin Heng and Qi Yin were stunned. Is Xiao Chen crazy? At the level of the Earth Mirror realm, he actually wanted to jump realms to kill enemies? One had to know that the higher a martial artist cultivation, the greater the gap between each major realm. It was just like the difference between the Yellow Realm and the mysterious Aeon Realm. The geniuses could kill enemies of a higher realm, just like in the Danyang region. However, when it came to the mysterious Aeon Realm and the Earth Mirror, the gap between the former could not be compared. In the mystic Aeon Realm, one would achieve the mystic spirit martial body, and one's physical strength would be completely squeezed to the extreme. In the Earth Mirror, one would comprehend the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Through the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, one would infuse the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the celestial spirit and open one's spiritual sense. Compared to a mysterious Aeon Realm martial artist, an Earth Mirror martial artist not only had a stronger physical body, but also had a spirit sense. As a result, an Earth Mirror martial artist's perception ability would greatly surpass a mysterious Aeon Realm martial artist's. When fighting against an enemy, they would be able to clearly perceive the opponent's movements. As a result, a mysterious Aeon Realm martial artist would have almost no chance of winning against an Earth Mirror martial artist. If the difference between the Yellow Realm and the mysterious Aeon Realm was the physical body, then the difference between the mysterious Aeon Realm and the Earth Mirror realm was the soul. It was precisely because of such a big difference between the two that everyone was so surprised when Xiao Chen said that even an Earth Mirror martial artist could fight on the stage. This was simply courting death. No matter how monstrous a martial artist was, it was impossible to jump realms to kill enemies in the mysterious Aeon realm. As expected, after Xiao Chen's voice fell, among the disciples of Zhao Lu's faction, a tall and sturdy young man whose cultivation had reached the Earth Mirror realm strode onto the life and death platform.